Hello, Clown Fiesta podcast listeners. Blue Jay here, alongside JNT 250 as always. I was gonna say Worlds just started, but I mean it kind of did, but play-ins are over already. We're already underway. It seems like it's going really fast, although that kind of happens every year. I really enjoyed play-ins this year. I don't normally watch that much of play-ins. I normally just watch the NA teams. This year I watched all of it, and it was freaking awesome. What did you think, JNT?
Yeah, I think the playing matches were really good. I feel like a lot of the teams were all on like the same relative skill level. It kind of felt like, especially like right from the get-go, with LGD losing. I think they lost their first match like right off the playing tournament. And that was like kind of a reality check for like LGD, and then how the rest of the basically the rest of the tournament went. Like it just felt like any team could beat any team, and
Yeah,
that's
which is
that's always
exactly
good,
what you
and it
want.
makes for exciting
Yeah.
games.
Yeah, and I think the first game was Mad Lions TL, right?
No, that was the last game of the first day.
Oh, that was the last. Right, you're right. But even that was also an upset.
Yeah,
And
I
I mean,
yeah.
it seems so crazy now because like after watching all of plans, we're all convinced that TL is just better than Mad. But going into that, most people probably would have had Mad taking down TL because you use the better region, so on and so forth. But anyways, we're gonna get into all that. Today's episode is gonna be a lot focused on plans, and then we're gonna shift towards the end into group stage a little bit. But before we get into any of that stuff, I want to talk a little bit about your first impressions of Worlds this year. We got a little bit of a different look, obviously, with quarantine and the bubble and all that stuff. Lots of little changes, but honestly, pretty interesting ones. What did you think of? Let's start with the stage. What did you think of like their little whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, I thought the stage was really, really cool. Just like the whole like the cliff thing that they had, like when the coaches would go and like shake hands, and then there was that one clip of the guy who like walked across. I was funny. The world stage does look super, super nice. It's good that a lot of the
Yeah.
players were saying in interviews that like it feels a lot better now that they're like back on a stage.
Yeah, honestly, I think the look was great too. I knew we were gonna have the same opinion there. I haven't heard too many people, not too many people. I haven't heard any people honestly say that they didn't like the new look, and I think it's partially because one, it just does look really cool, but two, no one's really coming in with a lot of expectations in a quarantine year. So I don't think there was much like I certainly wasn't expecting much. So when you saw like all this cool setup and the cool look, it was a really really nice surprise. But there was more than that, right? There was like I really thought the champ select was cool when the little hologram of the champion pops up for champ select. I thought that was really cool as well. What else was there? There was lots of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I get the only thing like weird about the champion select was how they had like the team on red side, their roles were
Yeah,
they were inverted, which was kind of weird. I do like the overall look of champion select. It's fairly identical to the LEC in terms of their like just exact way that it's set up and formatted, but having the roles inverted was a little bit weird at first, and it was kind of like what is going on? Like
yeah.
yeah, like I thought this player was supposed to be like a top laner, and like they have the support champion right now, and it took a bit of like figuring out right at the start to be like, oh, it's just inverted, and it
I
was
got
just
used
weird.
to it. I got used to it a little bit towards the end, but even towards the end, I was still hella confused looking across. I'm classic NA boy. I just go top down, man. That's me. I know a lot of people do like how the LEC does it, and they're always left to right. Um, I don't think there's any confusion if you go top down on each side. But again, I'm so used to just how the LCS does it, so that's probably why I think that way. Um, what else was I gonna say? Oh yeah, the one thing that I couldn't stop ignoring was the fucking Bose headsets. The headsets were so weird. So I we mentioned in a past episode that Bose is a sponsor this year, and so they have the Bose headsets, and the actual microphone is just wobbling in front of the players' faces. Did you see that or no?
No, but it sounds funny.
Oh my god, it was so annoying. I don't know if it was like that for all of the games, but definitely the first couple of days, I couldn't look at a player without their microphone just bouncing in front of their face. It was really distracting. Not a really good look for Bose as they just got a new sponsorship with Riot there, but I mean whatever. And the only other thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit was Cadril. He's a new caster. I thought he was awesome, dude. There was a lot of other people that felt the same way. Twitter was like really hyping him up. Reddit was hyping up. And I think it was really well deserved. I thought he was great at casting, and I'm pretty sure now he's considering a casting career, whereas before he was just a pro.
Yeah, I mean, that guy is definitely set up for success. Whenever he
Yeah,
wants to like retire as a pro player, he's pretty like I would say based on his EU Masters casting and now like his Worlds casting, like he's probably just guaranteed a job with the LEC like after he's no longer a pro player. And I mean, it's really good for him to pretty much set himself up kind of like for the rest of his the early parts of his life in terms of like job security, unless like the LEC like fucking just dies, which I don't think is gonna happen ever.
Yeah. It just felt like it came so natural to him. Like it didn't look like he struggled at all. He seemed really comfortable. And obviously, since he's an LEC jungler, like obviously he knows what he's talking about. So there was no issue there. And actually, the one other thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit was the referees with the little cards. Did you see that
Yeah,
when they're like showing
yeah, I remember I didn't know what it was at first, but then I think
No
somebody
one
mentioned
did.
yeah, somebody mentioned it on the broadcast like halfway through the playing tournament was like, "Oh yeah, these little cards are for like just to ask the players if like their conditions are all good, meaning like if they need to go to the bathroom or get like a drink or something." And I
Yeah,
was
it's
like,
like a checklist
"Yeah,
or
yeah, that's
something.
what it is." It was just yeah. Yeah.
It got to the point where by the end of play-ins, like they're like showing them the card, and they're just like waving them out, like, yeah, get out of here, like go away.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's what you do with language barriers, I guess, because I'm sure that that has to be the reason why. But okay, enough talk about this. Let's get into play-ins a little bit here. This week we're gonna do. We went tier list route this week because, well, first of all, there's like 10 different teams, and it's kind of hard to break them all down when like their games are all scattered all over the place. We thought the best way to kind of break it down was go tier list route. Do you want to start with S and work our way down?
Yeah, and just I guess to explain for the tier list, we're doing a tier list relative to the play-in tournament, not relative to all the
Hmm.
world's teams. So for example, the top play-in teams are going to be S tier and the worst play-in teams are going to be D tier. If obviously if this was relative to all the rest of the world's teams, none of these teams would be in S tier because
Right.
like yeah, just
No, that's a really good thing to explain because I mean I'm pretty sure we're both going to have TL and S tier, and people are going to say that we're crazy if we didn't specify that that is plan specific. But let's get into it. Did you have TL as S tier?
yeah, I did. I had TL as
Yeah.
my only S tier team. I just thought minus. It's hard to really like compare a team like Team Liquid to a team like Supermassive, who played like plenty more games. I think Supermassive played 12 games, including like their group stage matches and the best of fives they played, whereas TL only played 4 games. And even in those 4 games from TL, I just thought like despite the despite the INTZ game, this team looked like the best team by far at the play-in tournament.
Yeah.
I think they really only struggled against INTZ is because the game just kind of got too fast-paced and too hectic. They really disrupted Team Liquid's like timeline and motion of how they like to play the game. TL likes to play slow. They like to play methodical. And then whenever they get into these games where the games get super super hectic and there's cross map plays going on at all the time and there's 5 mans randomly happening in bot lane and top lane, it's really where you see Team Liquid struggle. I think back to like a few of their games in NA, like the Sona. Their 2 games against Cloud9, their 2 games against Immortals. Those two really stand out where like the games just get super super hectic and TL sometimes isn't really able to find their footing into the game. And but apart from that one INTZ game, like all the players on Team Liquid, just like they were playing on point. Impact looked really great. Broxah was looking really well. Jensen was, I think, in my opinion, the best player at the play-in tournament. Tactical didn't look nervous at all, and I think Core JJ was like a close second for being best player at the play-in tournament as well.
Yeah, honestly, TL did look the best, and it's going to be a little bit misleading. So, just for our listeners, so that they know, I also had TL in S tier, but then I had PSG and UOL. But that does not mean that I think that PSG and UOL were necessarily to TL's level. I got a little bit wonky with my tier list. I'm not going to lie; it probably should be looking a little bit more towards J and T's, but I'll explain later why I didn't have a D tier. But anyways, yes, I thought TL was very much able to play their style, which for me was the biggest worry coming into Worlds because they play very slow, and Worlds isn't usually a slow played game. It's usually fast, and that still could be the case. Like, I'm not totally sold on TL going into groups just because they looked really good in play-ins. They still play slow, and they could be punished for that, especially against teams like G2 and Suning. But we'll see how that goes. For now, they're able to play their style, and like you said, they looked good all over the place. I thought Impact really stepped up. Him and Broxa were probably my biggest worry coming in, but I thought they both looked really good. And so I think that if you're a TL fan, things that you were worried about, maybe you should be worried about, but maybe not as much after seeing them play play-ins.
Yeah, I know in our last episode I mentioned that my opinion on Team Liquid would, change for the better or for the worse, dependent on their play-in performances. And I definitely think that they performed a little bit better than I thought they would going in terms of, you know, playing and executing their drafts and team comps like pretty much to a T. But their problems in NA still showed on the world stage, and like for those reasons, I still think that they will potentially struggle in this group stage. We saw them get exploited by a team like INTZ and a team that is much better individually and much better coordinated, like Suning and G2. They still have difficult matches coming up along the road, and at least for me, I still have Team Liquid as third place in that group after this play-in tournament.
Yeah, a lot of sorry, I lost my train of thought. Uh oh yeah, okay. A lot of people were saying that the one TL draft against INTZ was kind of like a not one like sort of like they're testing things out kind of draft. I didn't necessarily feel that. I mean, sure, Impact was on Renekton. We haven't seen him play a lot of Renekton, but he's not foreign to that champion. And then you had Jensen on TF, and then Core JJ and what was Core JJ playing? Tactical was on Ash. Core JJ was on Thresh. Like these are not new picks to me. So when people said it was an experimental draft, I didn't really buy that. I actually just thought INTZ played good that game, and I think that people had a hard time giving INTZ credit because they looked bad for most of their games. But that game they looked pretty good, and they were the ones getting picks in side lanes against TL, even though TL was the one that were running with the Twisted Fate. So yeah, not the greatest game out of Team Liquid. All the other ones they looked really good though, and yeah, honestly, they were able to execute their game plan, and I think Jensen was absolutely beasting in the mid lane matchup specifically.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I don't think TL was really experimenting with that draft. The only thing experimental was putting Broxa on the Lilia, which he definitely did struggle with. And, Lilia is looking like a top tier jungler at this tournament.
Mhm.
So we'll have to see if another week of, I guess not even a week. Well, I guess for Team Liquid it is a week because they met it up pretty early. But with another week of practice and prep, hopefully um, they'll be able to utilize this pick a lot better because I know, in the group that they're going into with SOFM and Yankos, who are two very good junglers at this tournament, they are definitely going to be proficient on this champion. And, you're
Mhm.
going to be at a major draft disadvantage if you're being forced to ban Lilia on blue side or something like that, or, you know, enemy team is leaving it up when they're playing red side and they don't have to ban it, and you're either forced to pick it or get picked into like pigeonhole yourself potentially in the jungle. So we'll have to see. Overall, though, like I still think Team Liquid played very well, but I do think that their problems from NA still have shown, and that is my worry for them going into group stage.
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned the Lilia. We will get into meta a little bit later, so I don't want to go too much into it. But I do know SOFM plays a lot of Lilia, and I won't be surprised when Yankos plays that too. I don't know if he does or if he doesn't. But yeah, we won't be surprised to see that. I don't want to rush too much through the teams, but we do have a lot of teams to get through. So if you want to move on, I'm cool to move on to another team if you are.
Yep.
Okay, let's do that. So we each had, or we next up is PSG. I still had PSG in S, and JNT had PSG in A. Clearly, maybe we have them one off from each other, but clearly we both think that this team is good and they did perform really well. Give me some of your quick thoughts on PSG.
Yeah, honestly, when I first heard the news that they were playing with, at the time when I was looking up this team and trying to like research them a little bit, I only knew that they were playing with two subs in Kong Yue and uh, Uniboy,
Uniboy.
and I didn't even realize at the time that they were also playing with the sub ADC for the first two games. So
I
I
had
was,
no idea either. Like
yeah, like
no one said anything on broadcast. No one said a thing. So like
yeah,
everyone who doesn't watch these teams, everyone was lost. Everyone was like, okay, whatever. This must be their AD.
yeah. And so just for the people who don't know any of the substitute players that were on PSG, so Kong Yue and Uniboy are both from AHQ Esports, a top team in the PCS, and D is actually on the coaching staff of Machi Esports, who is in Group A at the tournament, which I don't even know how that's possible with a player being able to be on two different teams in the same tournament. Obviously, like it's obviously allowed because it happened, but just this team was really surprising to me. I like if you're going into Worlds and you're playing with three substitute players, like I was pretty much ready to write this team off, and they completely proved me wrong. They had their own just unique style in terms of how they like to play the game and how they played the map. Uniboy was playing the set mid with carry junglers for Kongyue. He's busting out his pocket pick Echo. He was undefeated on Echo before the playing tournament came in, where he lost his first game. I think it was in the tiebreaker against UOL, but this team just had their own like unique style that they played. And at Worlds now, like it's just really showing that you need to play your own style. You can't conform to the meta. You stick to what you know and you take it to the other team, and that's pretty much what PSG did.
So I don't think they lost. Just a little correction there. I don't think they couldn't have lost because they won the tiebreaker versus
Oh,
UOL.
then it
Because
might then
UOL
it
would have moved on,
then it
right?
might have been the regular the first the group stage matchup against UOL.
Yeah, but anyway, you are definitely right about his Echo. His Echo, I think that was the first champion he played. He absolutely popped off with it. I think he hard carried that game, if I remember right. But it
He had
wasn't
like
just like
13
we're
kills
talking
or
about
something.
Kanye.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
had
we're talking about
13
Kanye
kills.
here. Kanye was not just good on Echo; he was good on pretty much everything. It felt like you could put him on anything, and he was comfortable to just absolutely style with it. I'm pretty sure he played Kindred as well. Kindred was really good. I looked up some of the stats because I like to do that. He actually had a plus 16 CSD at 15, which is pretty damn good for junglers. Well, it's good for any role, let's be honest. But yeah, plus 16 CSD at 15. That was the highest for all junglers, so he was absolutely styling there. And I know you mentioned it already, but we need to reiterate what you said about like they had a coach from another team that's already in the group stage play for them in plans.
Yeah.
That is so whack. Like I can't believe that. Like and for just for those just so you know, I did make sure that JNT double checked and did his research on this. I was like this can't be real. And sure enough, this is what the data is telling us on whatchamacallit there. Help me out.
It was like the Wikipedia, like the league
Yes,
Wikipedia
the
thing.
lol wiki. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I just need to reiterate that because that to me is the most messed up thing. I can't believe that that is allowed. Yeah, sure, they're kind of separate parts of the tournament group stage versus play-ins, but I don't care. That is just weird. But anyways, that's what happened, and you wouldn't even notice. Honestly, you wouldn't notice that it was another sub. This team looked so solid, even with their other subs. Kanye and Uniboy were the ones that were really carrying this team, and they were subs. Like it
Yeah.
was absolutely unreal. And by the way, Uniboy had a KDA of 24 over the 5 games that he played. He had a KDA of 24. Absolutely styling this team, and so that's why I put them in S because it felt wrong to put them in A. But at the same time, I didn't feel that they were as good as TL, so I didn't put them or I didn't want to put them in S. So that's why I really struggled. But yeah, anyways,
Yeah, just for me, I just really love the style that PSG Talon played. It's kind of similar, in a way, just how C9 plays, where they just play the first 15 minutes of the game exclusively through mid jungle. You pick a more supportive champion for mid lane, a push and roam, somewhat early game champion for your mid laner, and just exclusively play around the jungler. You follow him everywhere. You follow his invades. You roam with him to other lanes, and I just really loved the way that PSG was playing through the mid jungle. It was really impressive, and it was, you know, you could imagine that, like, yes, these players are going to come into this team with not a lot of synergy. Yes, sure, they're going to work well together, but will they work with the rest of the team? And it looked like that they weren't playing with any subs at all.
it feels like you're forced to play solo queue. That's what it
Yeah.
feels like. It feels like they're playing on Super Server or something, and it's just like, oh, we happen to be teamed up against 5 players from the other team. Like, I don't know. But even though the mid jungler were really good and we're highlighting that a lot, I don't want to put shade over to the other roles because top looked good, Hanabi looked great. And then we had Kai Wing who looked really good. I thought that coming into this tournament, we would talk about Kaiser and Core JJ as being the guys that were just so good at finding those engages. Maybe Mark from LGD, but to me, it was very much Core JJ and Kai Wing. This guy was insane at finding fights. His Rakan was absolutely nuts. It was like a KD of 47. Over 3 games, he had a KD of 47 on Rakan. He was 1-1 and 46. His Bard looked good. Even in their loss, he played Alistair, but he had some really nice engages on the Alistair too. So I thought that he played good in every single one of their games. So I really wanted to give a lot of credit to Kai Wing as well.
Hmm.
Anything else before we move on?
Nope.
Okay, let's move on to UOL. UOL will be making Worlds, well, making group stage at Worlds for the first time. This to me, we were talking about it before. This to me is history. Nolan doesn't like to call this stuff history, but it's history to me. This is a brand new region making the group stage. This team came close a couple times. Best of 5 against Cloud9, I believe, and maybe another best of 5. Am I right?
Um,
I'm not sure about that.
no.
Anyways, I know that they were in a best of 5 against Cloud9 the year that Cloud9 made it to semis
Wait, no,
in
no, no. This is
2018.
this is not correct. What?
What's not correct?
UOL? That you're thinking of Gambit.
Oh, it was the region. My mistake.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Yes, it was Gambit, which was the same region. My mistake. Which went to a best of five against Cloud9 in 2018, and so the region itself has been very close to getting out of play-ins, and this year is the first year that they managed.
Hmm. Yes.
Yes, thank you for correcting me there.
Yeah, Unicorns of Love, they were another like super interesting team going into it. I think everyone had the idea that this was going to be, before play-in stage started, like this was going to be the second seeded team out of the group behind LGD. But, Unicorns of Love, they're rocking three-fifths of the same roster that was at Worlds last year in Boss, Ananasek, and No Man's, and it was fairly similar, their play style and how they performed to the previous play-in tournament. Obviously, much better in the best of fives this time than last year round. But similar to PSG Talent, they sort of have their own unique play style that they like to do. They have really unique drafts. I really liked what Gadget and Santas bring to the table in terms of their drafting. They ran Swain bot, they ran Orianna bot, and being able to play mages in the bot lane adds just a whole different element to your drafting, which gives you a huge advantage. We've seen this and with many other teams in the past, like I mentioned last episode, G2 sort of kind of created this whole like flex champion meta with like Aurelia and Akali back in season 8 when they were super meta. And UOL is kind of doing a similar thing with the bot lane. I really like when players are able to play multiple different styles of champions in their role. I don't like it when one player on a team is exclusively a tank player or exclusively
Yeah.
you pick an early lane champion and if they don't get ahead, they're going to lose, they're not going to win the game for you. I really like it when you're able to have players who are able to play multiple different styles and champions and are able to switch it up depending on whatever in the draft. We saw in the draft where they picked Orianna bottom. I think it was that they blind picked Orianna on R4 and then ended up flexing it bot lane when they locked in Kassadin. I believe that's what it was. They locked in Kassadin. And it was just, I don't know, it just when you're able to draft like that and you're able to get an edge on your opponents through like random flex picks, it makes draft much easier.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, especially when it comes to worlds, that's something that we harp on a lot. You can't be that guy that only plays one specific role. You have to be able to play multiple different things, and I think that's something we got specifically out of their bot lane. I mean, their mid lane as well. We had No Man's playing Vayne and then Cassident like it was he was playing just about whatever he wanted, honestly, and wasn't getting punished for it. He was absolutely styling on people. But their bot lane as well. Gadget looked really good. Gadget was able to play the Twitch, and he was able to play it effectively, and then he was able to play Ziggs or Swain or Orianna. So he was playing a lot of different stuff, and I think Nanasic, I think that he actually. I'm getting a lot of noise there. Sorry if that's not on the recording, but I got a lot of noise in my headset. Sorry
Yeah,
for
sorry.
listeners.
Sorry. But yeah, go again though. It's fixed.
I was talking about Ananasic. He actually had like a really bad CSD at 15, and I think that's mostly because of game two in their last best of five series when he was down like 90 to 45 CS. All because of like a bad invade and whatnot. But I actually thought that Ananasic had a really good, honestly, just play-ins, not even just a good series. I think he was really solid all around, and so I really liked his performance. The only weak spot that I actually found from this team was Boss in the top lane. And it's not even that I thought he was awful. I just didn't think that he had as much pressure and impact on the game as everybody else on the team. So I think that if this team is going to be successful in group stage, they need Boss to step up because top lane is an island and you're going to get absolutely wrecked if you have to play against some world class top laners. JNT, are you muted? I don't hear you.
Oh, I'm muted. Sorry. Um, yeah, going into the tournament and looking at the previous worlds from last year, Boss was definitely a super good player coming into it, and he definitely, wasn't at the same level that he was last year, but I still think he did a good job being a little bit more of a weak side player and not necessarily needing a ton of resources. I know he definitely didn't perform as well as he, had previously done, but I think he did like a serviceable job, and that's one
Yeah.
really important thing that you need to be doing is if you're not going to be carrying and you're not going to be getting all the resources, your job is to just not die and play even or a little bit behind. Quite often, you'll see top laners. I mentioned top laners in specifically because I think at the World Championships you need to be able to play the weak side of the map very, very well. And if not, you're going to get punished on repeat. I know we're going to discuss Mad Lions later, but Arome was doing a terrible job at being a weak side player and just like trying to scoop up his resources without overextending. Many, many times did we see him falling behind in lane due to, small overextensions that would easily get punished by a jungle gank. And with Boss, I think he did a really good job playing weak side of the map, and that's something that I really like from top laners, especially at Worlds.
Yeah, I mentioned that I thought Ananasic had a really good series, although I actually need to highlight the one Skarner game. We've talked before on this podcast about some picks where it feels like they haven't practiced it and it feels like it's pure theory. The Skarner game very much felt like that when he was playing into the Evelyn. Evelyn just absolutely styled on him. That might have been, I think that was Jose Dioto's Evelyn pop off game. I'm not really sure, but that game to me, it felt like he didn't really know what to do on Skarner. He felt a little bit lost, and yeah, it's supposed to be a counter to the Evelyn, but if you don't actually have good practice on this champion, and for the record, I don't know if he did or didn't have enough practice. It just definitely seemed like he didn't. And so if you don't know how to play these matchups and how to actually be the counter, I don't think that it's even worth taking the counter pick, honestly. But that was the only game to me that he looked really, really weak.
Yeah, I definitely agree that he definitely probably like Skarner is just a very good champion into Evelyn to begin with because if you ever see her, you can just flash ult onto her, and
Yeah,
she
you
either
just
had,
grab her.
and especially when you're on a champion like Evelyn, who especially right now likes to go second item death cap, and if you have to force that champion to pay the QSS tax of 1,300 gold, like you're pretty much delaying the Rabadon spike by like 5 minutes, or you're forcing the Evelyn to play so much riskier. I think back to the C9 versus TSM series in Game 4 when Spica whipped out the Skarner to counterpick Blabber's Evelyn, and at least Spica seemed very practiced on that champion, and it
Yeah.
really shows. But yeah, Anasek definitely didn't have the best of games that game.
Yeah, you could tell the difference between someone who's actually knows what they're doing on that champion, or not even
Yeah.
just that champion, but in that matchup specifically. And I think that was pretty evident there. I want to talk about No Man's a little bit because this play I thought was the funniest play of the whole play-ins was the Cassidon play when he's just being chased for a year and a half. Now, I don't know whether to say he styled on him or not, but somehow he managed to get away, and I thought that was just hilarious. But not only that, he actually did look good on Cassidon, not just in that game, but well, in every Cassidon game. Did he only play two?
Play
I don't
two.
remember how many Cassidon games he played, but he looked good on all of them. I can tell you that. There was not once where I remember watching No Man's Cassidon be like, and I was never thinking, man, I wish this guy was better on Cassidon, or man, this guy's not doing anything. He was absolutely styling with the pick.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I was just looking at the stats for his two Kassadin games, and they're like exactly the same.
Oh, really? Like as
Same,
far as what, like KDA, you mean,
yeah,
or what?
same exact KDA when the game ended. Same exact item builds. Oh wait, no, that's Cap. He had a. It's pretty much the same exact item builds though, but
Okay.
same exact KDA. And yeah, I thought No Man's was a little bit similar to Boss in that I had a little bit of higher expectations for him going into the tournament. But I still think he played really, really well, really, really well. For me, a lot of UOL's success was more akin to their bot lane and their jungling. But I definitely think Boss and No Man's are very good players, and they are going to have their money cut out for them, or whatever the
Work
saying is,
work cut
or
out
their
for
yeah
them.
their work
Their
cut
work
out for
cut out
them
for.
in
Yeah,
the
I
in the
mean
in
they
the group
will though. They
stage.
will. You're exactly right. I don't got anything else on them. You ready to move on, or you got
Yep,
anything else? Okay, let's move on to who's next.
LGD.
LGD. Okay, good. I knew it was wrong. I have my list like backed up. Anyways, LGD. Let's talk about them because they came out really lackluster, and then well, they won their last 6 games with 2 sweeps in a row. So this team was night and day.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty surprising. I believe their first game was against PSG Talon, where Kangwei whipped out the Echo, went 13-0 and 8, and everyone at the time was like, "Oh, okay, first game of the World Series for LGD, they'll be back." Their second game against Rainbow Seven, they go out and lose that. Was it against Rainbow Seven or was it against somebody else? I believe it was against Rainbow Seven. their
I think it
second
was
game.
Rainbow Seven.
Yeah, they go
I don't
they
know.
go up
I
against
don't.
Rainbow Seven, and every at the time, Rainbow Seven had played 2 games, and everyone thought that Rainbow Seven was the weakest team at the tournament. And then they go out and lose to Rainbow Seven, and then they're going into day three of the playing tournament, 0-2, and pretty much in like a must-win situation because the way that the play-in format ended up working was you have to win one game to be able to advance to the knockout stage at the least. It'd be one game plus a tiebreaker. They ended up their only 2 victories of the group stages were both against V3 esports, and I guess in this different playing format, it was enough to get them to the knockout stage. And in the knockout stage, they're really able to show their skills. I think this team was much more comfortable in the best of 5 format. And just in terms of like their drafting, I wouldn't say they got cheesed. I think they were just playing bad. They had a little bit of a slow start. But I think once they were able to dissect their problems a little bit and figure out the need to switch up their play style a little bit, because we saw in the first couple games they were giving up a lot of early objectives, trading objectives for farm, and when it came time to actually start fighting for objectives, when the enemy team was on 2 dragons, 3 dragons around Baron, they were really slow in terms of like playing aggressive for like vision control, and also with that like battling like fighting the enemy's vision control. They would like end up kind of just getting these like standoffs where they would lose their vision and then just back up and give up an objective. They went down like both Dragon Souls in their first 2 games. Like it was just this team looked really off, and I think people were really nervous going into that last day before they ended up making it to the knockout stage. But they looked a lot better in the knockout stage. I think China kind of let out a sigh of relief.
Yeah, even though they looked so bad to start, everyone was still saying like they don't want to play LGD when it comes time for BO5s. Like no one wanted to play against them, and they clearly showed why no one wanted to play against them. There was also a rumor. I saw this. I think it was Yamato that was talking about this rumor that Supermassive may have wanted to throw one of their games in order to put themselves in a different spot so that they wouldn't bump into LGD. Uh, Clearly, that didn't matter. I don't even think that's true, anyways. But it was just a rumor, just to show how much people really didn't want to play against this team because people knew LGD could turn it on at any time, and they certainly did. But before they did that, I do want to talk about where they struggled because to me, it was so weird how some of their performances were so good, but also some so bad at other times. In game one, Kramer randomly splits off from the rest of his team. They're around Dragon. No AD carry randomly walks towards like I don't even think Red Buff was up, and he walked towards Red Buff, and the rest of his team was walking towards like the other team's blue buff. It made no sense how they split off. Naturally, he got picked off. And then after he gets picked off, the team then decides to fight a 4v5 without their AD carry for the third dragon point. Like, it's not soul. Like, that's something that a team wouldn't normally do. And of course, they lost that fight and ended up losing the game against PSG. Like, that was so uncharacteristic. And then you have guys like Xie. Xie was honestly so good in lane. I actually still think that this guy's going to be a mechanical god in this tournament. But he would look so great in lane and then just do random stuff like, oh, Oriana ball, I'm going to go stand on that. Like, it didn't make any sense how good he could be in lane and then how much he could just throw with really weird decisions.
Yeah, his Twisted Fate was pretty interesting. Like he'd pretty much, and anytime he picked TF, he would pretty much get up like 3-0 in the first 15 minutes of the game, and then just start like doing some really int ults, like
Yeah.
ulting onto like 3 members of the back line, and like gold card Zanyazing, and then you're so far away from your team at that point, you're forcing your team to run into the enemy team to end up to try to protect you, and it just felt really off. Like their laning phase, LGD was fine. I thought a lot of their players were still very good in lane, but where this team really faltered was in their objective control for me. And when you're behind on objective control, you're then forced to just make a lot of plays that you don't necessarily want to have to make. You want to be able to in various comps that they were playing, I think they had like a Camille game, a Jax game. They had Kramer playing a lot of scaling ADCs, and they ended up just having to take these random fights because they ended up getting down 2, 3 dragons so early on into the game.
Yeah, and specifically with the TF pick for GA, like it okay, TF is not supposed to have that much pressure in lane, but like he actually had so much pressure with playing the TF pick. He would always be shoving in the enemy mid laner. That's not exactly like you're not supposed to be able to do that so freely early on. Maybe later on as you scale, but not that early. And yeah, anyways, just I was really impressed specifically with his TF performance.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have too much to say about LGD. It was Yeah, yeah, man, I don't
I
know.
want to
Like,
talk. I want to talk a little bit about Peanut a little bit because to me it was weird that he was falling so far behind on the Lee Sin. That was one thing that really stood out to me. So I do want to talk about Peanut because, well, we've seen Peanut for a long time. He's known as a guy that can make a lot of really nice plays, and you would think that on Lee Sin that would be the champion to make a lot of really nice plays. But he was trying to force ganks and he couldn't make anything happen and he would just keep falling behind. This was, I think, their second game. I want to say. I want to say this was their second game of the tournament. I think he was playing Lee Sin, and he just fell really behind. I think it was to Rainbow Seven, but don't quote me on that.
yes, it
Um,
was.
yeah, just really, really weird. But then we saw Peanut absolutely show up when it came time for the best of fives. Well, honestly, we saw the whole team show up, if we're being completely honest. And Lang Xing was absolutely a monster in side lanes. I want to talk a little bit about him too, because I think that even when this team was performing poorly, I thought he was the only guy that didn't really deserve some of these losses. Now, I'm not saying he was without fault, because he did actually have some mistakes. Like, nobody played perfect, but I thought that for the most part, he put in a lot of pressure against enemy top lanes, and he felt to me like he was a step above pretty much every top lane opponent that he played against.
Yeah, his laning phase, him and GA's laning phases were really, really good. I liked his you know, there were a lot of questions about like Volibear as a top lane champion pick. I know like LS really, really hates that champion being played top lane, but
Yeah,
I thought he was actually making the champion work really well. I want to just bring the game up here, but I don't remember exact. I think they were playing against V3 Esports, but he was playing Volibear top lane and it was into Galio mid, and he did a really nice job just using like the Volibear, like using Volibear as a champion with the ultimate and the stuns, specifically trying to just ruin the Galio as much as possible. Quite often we'd see like they would get Galio to blow his ult on a champion they were diving, and Long Zhang would like, just dive in with the Volibear ult and just sit on the target and completely burst them. I thought his laning phases were really well, and when he was playing those sort of dive in aggressive champions like the Camille, like the Volibear, like the Jax, I thought he did a really fantastic job. And his Ornn was good. Like he was just playing Ornn, and Ornn's a pretty brain dead and broken champion if you're not dying a bunch early. But I definitely thought that Long Jing was the most consistent player on LGD, and kind of I feel like if he would have been performing bad in a lot of their losses, like there would have way more teams would have been worried, way more people would have been worried about this team.
yeah, they might not have made it out, and they not might not have made it into groups. Jeez, that was hard to say. But anyways, yeah, there's a real good chance that without this guy, they don't move on. However, they did. So good for them. But yeah, definitely gonna keep my eye on them in group stage because I think that they're going into a group that is already really volatile. Like, I don't know what to expect out of TSM Fnatic. And I think LGD is just another one to add to the list of teams that I don't know how they will perform. So
Yeah.
I honestly think that group is up for the taking. Like, I think that, first of all, I've said this already that I think Gen G is going to take the group, but I think that second slot could be either one of the three remaining teams in that group.
Yeah, LGD was the other team that I sort of pegged as my opinions could change on them depending on their play-in performances. And I definitely think that it's now a much tighter race for the second seed in that group. I still favor Fnatic, but I sort of had LGD as more of a favorite for third place over TSM. And even in that, I still think that any of these three teams, obviously I have Gen G first, but any of these three teams could end up the second seed, and definitely makes
Yeah.
it much more interesting with LGD underperforming specifically in the best of ones because, you know, put LGD in a best of five. If group stage is the best of five, I think LGD is maybe favored as the second seed, but it's best of ones, and as we saw, anything can really happen.
Yeah, yep. All right, let's move on to Supermassive. I don't know if we specified this, but we both had LGD in A tier. So
Yes.
just to clarify that. Now let's move on to Supermassive. I had them in A tier. JNT had them in B tier. I want to start off with some of their drafts because one of their drafts really intrigued me. That was the draft where, well, we saw Balulu play Lulu a couple of times, but the draft where it was Shen, Hecarim, Lulu, Senna, and oh god, I don't remember the support now. That's gonna escape me. But the point is that they got like a really interesting comp there where they can send the Hecarim in and he's got a bunch of support because he's got Senna who's kind of a support, you got Lulu who's an absolute support, and then Shen with the ultimate. And I thought that it was a really, really interesting draft. I like seeing things like that. I like seeing the Shen Hecarim. I think it's a really good comp. But this team was also really hit or miss. I think they came out on fire and then kind of slowed down. They kind of did the opposite to what LGD did.
Yeah, for me, and a lot of the reason why I had them in B tier, and I think if not for Armut or Armut, I don't know if it's exactly how
Armut.
to,
I think
Armut.
it's Armut. I don't know.
I don't know. If not for him, I think this team is honestly like a C or D tier team. I thought that guy had the team on their fucking back in the
Really?
group stage. Yeah, I think his performances on Wukong were really, really insane. He was using like vision pockets and his flanks really, really well. I think if this guy wasn't carrying the shit out of them in their group stage matches, like this team would probably be 1-3.
I see. Here's the. So I agree with you in that he was their best player. I thought he was great, but I disagree in saying that he was hard carrying. I thought Kakao had some good performances. The real weak spot for me was Balulu in the mid lane. I didn't think that he was very good, although he was playing a lot of just supporty champions and just like role playing champions. Like he played Set mid, he played Galio, he played Lulu. So it's not even the best champions to shine on, but even still, he looked weak on those champions. I thought their bot lane looked fine though. I thought Zeitnot looked really good on the Ezreal specifically. I thought that in all of the team fights that he was on Ezreal, there was one gaff. I remember one pretty big hiccup where he arcane shifted in, but for the most part, his Ezreal was really good, where you could rely on him to do a lot of damage and stay safe. So I actually thought that his Ezreal was pretty good, and Snowflower I thought was great on the Alistair. Not even just great, like really, really good on the Alistair. I think he played some Leona as well, so I thought that he was really good with getting some good engages, which is what we're seeing from most supports right now. You need to be able to engage with the Rakan, the Alistair, the Leona. It seems to be the support meta right now. We'll talk a little bit more about meta later, but I think that's something that seems to be to fit his play style. So I thought he played really well. Also, to me, the biggest weakness of their team outside of their mid laner, Balulu, sorry, I thought was just their decision making. Like they would get early game leads and they would be their biggest weakness was themselves. Like they would find a way to throw or take fights that they're not ready for. I remember there was the one game where they were really far ahead. They had the Hecarim snowballing and he's about to finish his death stance and you could just wait for that spike to fight. There was no dragon up or anything, but they engage anyways, and Hecarim gets popped. And I remember thinking if he just had his death stance, there's no issue here, and they end up winning that fight and probably the game. But that wasn't the case. Yeah, I don't know. I just think their mid laner was their weak link, and so I still thought they were a good team. That's why I had them in A.
Yeah, for me personally, I actually really liked the style that this team was playing when they had Armut on the carry champions, and they ran a bit more of a supportive style out of Balulu, whether he was playing the Galio, whether he was playing the Lulu, and then they had Cacao on something like the Lilia or the Hecarim to really just help create room and CC for Armut to play his engages, specifically on the Wukong. I really disliked the way that they shifted their drafts in the best of five format, throwing Armut on Malphite and Scion pretty much. I didn't like that whatsoever. I know it was good in terms of like picking Malphite and Scion into the enemy team comps, but for me, when I was watching this team in the group stage, it really seemed like it was Armut and Armut only performing well in both decision makings and in late game team fighting. Quite often, somebody on Supermassive would get picked and Armut would pretty much like be diving in there 1v3, end up killing two people to try to save the game for the enemy team to Camp Baron. So many times I remember watching these games where a Supermassive player would die early and Armut would be the last one alive and end up killing two players, usually sometimes somebody like the ADC or the mid laner, and prevent the enemy team from doing a major objective, and then would end out stalling the game. And yeah, I really dislike the way that they shifted in draft to more carry-oriented mids and more tank-oriented top lanes. I thought when they were playing the supportive mid with the Lulu Galio and the engage CC junglers with the Hecarim and the Lilia to really help Armut like carry the shit out of the game because that's pretty much what he was doing. I thought they looked a lot better.
Yeah, I agree with you on that as well. When they put Balulu on the Azir, he didn't do anything with it,
Yeah,
honestly.
I did. Yeah, don't do that, please. Don't do that.
Yeah, I remember thinking like, oh, because we've seen him play so many like supportive mids, like, oh, this is his chance to show like what he can do if he gets a carry, and
He didn't do
I'm not gonna
shit.
lie, I don't really want to see what he can do anymore. Like,
Well, we
I
don't
know
have
that's
to. They're
BM,
gone.
but it's just I know. Take care, comb your hair to super massive. Yeah. Anyways, I thought that it was I thought I did mention that their drafts were interesting, but I actually okay. I want to talk about their first game draft and their last best of five. The one where they first picked Misfortune. That was so weird to me, and I was like, this can't be a good draft. But then by the end, I was like, Okay, this is a really good draft. They didn't win that game because they got swept, but um, they went MF Lilia, which I thought was really smart because the sleep won't get affected by MF's ultimate, so that was cool. But then they also have the Lilia with the Malphite too, which is also really good. You could sleep and then Malphite won't like you can't block any abilities from Malphite getting to you. You know what I'm saying? Like
Hmm.
there's a lot of times if someone slept, you'll block whatever abilities come in their way. No, you're not stopping Malphite. So I liked that combo as well. And the Rakan Galio. Like you are just diving with Malphite, Rakan, and Galio following up. I really liked the Wombo. It just felt like they got so far behind just from some poor mistakes and poor decision making that it felt like they weren't really able to show how good this draft was. I thought the draft was amazing. I think the enemy had Twitch,
Yep.
and yeah, I think that you should absolutely fuck up that Twitch if you have Rakan, Malphite, Galio, and Misfortune. It
Yeah.
just, yeah, I loved that draft, so I really wanted to give props for that.
Malphite
I think
into
that
a mobile ADCs should be not a fun time for ADCs.
yes, but dude, that was the one game like that was the one game where Snowflower could not get on top of the Twitch. Like I mentioned that he was great with engaging. Not in that game. That was the game that I thought that he really struggled. Because Rakan shouldn't have that hard of a time getting on top of the Twitch either. Nevertheless, he didn't, and he they paid the price for it. So that's that.
Yeah, just for me personally, I really wish we could have seen another a different version of their drafting in their best of five against Unicorns of Love. I think it would have been a much closer and better series
Yeah.
if we had seen similar drafts to earlier in the play-in tournament.
Okay, we still got 5 teams to get through, right? So
Yeah.
let's
Oh
move
yeah.
along here. Let's move on to what do we got? Rainbow Seven next.
Legacy.
Legacy. Okay, Legacy's next.
Yeah, we both had Legacy as a B tier team. This team definitely overperforming across all aspects, results, individual players. Maybe not all individual players, but some of the players on their team. I thought this team actually, they did a pretty good job for, what they were given. I think it kind of looking back on it, Group A was a much weaker group than Group B, with INTZ not being very good, with Mad Lions really faltering, and I think Legacy did a good job of just capitalizing on those teams and picking up wins because of it.
Yeah, so this team, I thought originally I thought I was going to be able to put them in C or D tier because they came out looking really bad. And I still thought that they were honestly bad more towards the end. I actually, before the game against TL, I had to message JNT and I had to tell him, I was like, if TL loses this game, I'm going to be so pissed because I just thought Legacy looked really bad. Um, Even though that happened, there were some performances where I thought that they looked better. I thought Reyes looked really bad in his first game. He played the Tristana. He could not get himself out of anything. Like I don't know why he was playing Tristana. He couldn't buffer anything. Bard was all over him, and I thought that he had a really bad performance. But as the tournament went on, he had a pretty good Ezreal performance, and so I thought he looked a lot better. I thought Isle started to get some good engages off. I thought his Alistair was pretty good, and so that made me bump them up a little bit more as time went on. But I could have put this team in C as well. To me, it was between B and C. I just thought that they were better than the other 3 teams that I have in C, being Mad Lions, V3, and INTZ. But yeah, I thought that this team got, I don't want to say lucky, but like they overperformed. Like 3-1 is not what I would expect from this team. If we were to do all the games all over again, I would expect a 2-2 or a 1-3 out of this.
Yeah, honestly, I agree. I think they were definitely just doing a good job of punishing their opponent's mistakes. And, obviously, that's not how you really want to be winning games at the World Championships. You want to be winning because, you're the better team and you're playing better than your opponents. But it kind of just seemed like in a lot of Legacy's games, like they just did a really good job of capitalizing the stupidity of the enemy teams.
Yeah,
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 I definitely agree with you that their bot lane overall played pretty well. Yes, Reyes' Tristana was he didn't exactly he kind of it was weird. He was like figuring out in the middle of the game how to do the Tristana W buffer on the Bard ultimate. He would always end up doing the Tristana rocket jump too early. So like
yeah.
it just for the people who don't know, you can buffer Tristana's W, which is her rocket jump, to where if you get hit by a form of CC or like a blitz hook or anything like that, the cast will still go off while it's in like the
Yeah.
little zero point 0.5 seconds wind up phase. So almost every time he would end up jumping too early to where he was already flying, like he just started his jump and then he would get bard ulted where the whole thing would get canceled, as opposed to waiting like a little bit, waiting for the bard to hit you, then using your W to buffer the jump. But yeah, I mean, the problem that I really had with this team, and it really showed against Team Liquid, why they got absolutely just pooed on by Team Liquid, was their solo laners. Like Jensen, like I remember in the first game against Legacy, like people were really like hyping up Broxa because he had such a good early game. And yes, he had a good early game. He was 5-0 on the Graves, but two of the kills he last hit with ultimate, and like Jensen was just gapping Tally so hard, like pretty much from
That
minute
was
one.
the Lucian. That was Lucian and Oriana game, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Jensen was on Oriana, and
Hmm.
Oriana isn't the worst pick in the Lucian. Like, but Lucian, you picked the Lucian to win lane. He wasn't winning lane. Tally was
Yeah,
struggling against Jensen, but I mean, everybody did kind of.
yeah. I remember in season 7 Worlds at the playing tournament when Jensen back on C9, Jensen somebody picked Lucian into Jensen. It was like Team One, who was a CB LOL team. They picked Lucian into Jensen. Jensen picked LeBlanc in response, and I just, he was like double his farm at like 6 minutes into the game and had 2 kills, and it was just straight up over from the get go. Don't
Yeah.
if you're worse than Jensen, don't try to beat Jensen. Play something where you're gonna go like even or behind. Don't try to win lane against Jensen. If you're not better than him, you're gonna lose.
Yeah. And I don't want to harp too much on Tally, but I can't ignore game two in their best of five against LGD, where they did absolutely nothing for 20 minutes against a Cassidon.
Yeah,
Tally
with
sat there as TF. I don't even think he ulted. I don't even know when his first ultimate was in the game, but it took forever for it to happen. Nothing happened, and then what do you know? They got outscaled. Like they had one team fight. They still should have won that game, by the way. They had super minions crashing the base, and they decided to force the dragon fight, but that's neither here nor there. They decided to take the fight. Kassadin freaking owns them. I think gets a quadra kill, and the game's just over there. So poor macro. Uh, honestly, poor macro in the early and late game. They just didn't do anything that game. So to me, they deserve to lose that game and the series, honestly. But yeah, I don't want to harp too much more on this team. And again, we do have some other teams to get through. So if you have any last thoughts, get your last thought in on LGC and let's move on. I think.
they did OCE proud, I would say. A lot of the
Yeah.
OCE casters and personalities on Twitter were very proud of their team's performance, and they did a good job. Unfortunately, they drew LGD in the best of five, and
Did you
it
see
was
what
yeah,
happened on the analyst desk after game two? Did you see that? What happened with Spawn?
no.
So Machine was just asking him some questions, and then Spawn said, "Yeah, we'll see what happens in this last game." And he's like, "Last game? It's a best of five. I guess not a lot of confidence out of our team pushing a fourth game." It was a pretty sad little slip for Spawn, and Spawn's like, "Last game for now," or something like that. It was it was so sad, but
Yeah.
nonetheless, let's move on.
Yeah, next team we had was Rainbow Seven. I had them in the C tier. Blue Jay had them up in the B tier with Legacy. My reasonings are just, I guess, not reasonings, but my thought of this team are fairly similar to Legacy in that they kind of felt like, they won their games by punishing their opponents, and they did a good job of it. In the game against Unicorns of Love, Jose Diodo was doing a really good job abusing an NSEC on the Skarner and not really exactly knowing what to do. And in their game against LGD, they did a really good job of punishing GA and his like overextension on the Twisted Fate for a lot of his ults. And as we mentioned before, Peanut going for, he was being a little over aggressive in that game, and I think Rainbow Seven
Hmm.
did a good job of, you know, punishing teams' mistakes. But in terms of being the more proactive team and winning the game because they're the better team and setting up plays for themselves, it didn't really feel like that was happening.
Well, and there was Kate. There was so much hype. So I'll be the Debbie Downer. I don't care. There was a lot of hype around Jose Diodo and how an NA team should sign him next year. And don't get me wrong, he had some really good performances on the Nidalee and on the Lee Sin, on the Evelyn. But he also had some really lackluster ones too, where he
Yeah,
was
like
just
on the
doing
Hecarim.
nothing. Like he had a Nidalee game where he was useless as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
and Heckram. Like so, to me, he was so hit or miss that it's like that's not really what I want in LCS. And maybe this guy's got a lot of potential, and maybe eventually he will be someone that we pick up in the LCS. But like from what I saw in this tournament, I wasn't as excited as everybody else was on the cast. for Jose Dioto. I thought he was okay. I thought he belonged at plans, but I didn't think he belonged in groups. And that's kind of how things went down. So to me, it seemed like it worked out the way it should. I was a lot more disappointed in Ase or Ache or what's the
Ase.
guy? Whatever the top laner's name is.
Yeah, Ase.
I didn't think he did much of anything, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah, I don't know. He just got
His Scion was disappointed. I did not
he
like his
just got
Scion.
thrown on the island straight up. Like he got no help at all. Like
He
he
would
was
try
just
to
thrown on an
engage with
island.
Scion ultis, and his Scion ultis would just miss every time. And don't get
Yeah.
me wrong, that's not an easy ability to land. But usually
Oh,
you're
I know
ulting
that.
because if you miss, yeah, true.
I'm going in lol.
JNT has a history with Scion ultis. But anyway, if you're gonna Scion ulti in and miss, that's fine. But normally you position yourself in a way that you're forcing the people that you're engaging on to either have to run through your Scion queue or run into your other teammates. And it just felt like he was never putting himself in a good position with the Scion ult. If you don't land it, you need to be in a good position. He wasn't getting good position. He wasn't landing it, so it was like useless. So I don't know. I really didn't like his Scion.
Yeah, the only I think bright spot for this team was Alone in the mid lane. I thought he did a really good job playing more of the carry oriented champions. He a really good Lucian game, I think, had a really good Orianna game. And he was like the only player that really stood out to me on this team. You know, just to jump back to Jose Dioto a little bit, I remember seeing some stuff on Twitter saying that like CLG should sign this guy and like that he's going to be like a closer 2.0 kind of thing, like signing a top tier talent from like an emerging regions team. But this guy, at least in my opinion, this guy doesn't have like the potential that Closer did. And
I would be pretty disappointed.
I'd be happy for him to join an NA Academy team, spend a year in Academy, hopefully do really well, and then maybe get promoted to like an LCS team. But I definitely don't think that, for one, he's not a top he's not like a top player in his own region, and two, he was like a bit coin flip, and I don't want to sign coin flip players in the NALCS. We don't need more coin flip players. We need more consistent players.
So here's what I'll say though, because a lot of people would disagree with you. Now I don't know uh, how I really feel about it, but um, he actually was, or some of his teammates were saying that he was actually
Well, of
one
course
of the better players
of course his
in
teammates are going to say
exactly
that.
right.
Like, you know what I mean?
Exact.
I saw that
Sure.
post saying his support was like, "Oh, he's like one of the best players in the league." Yeah, your
Sure.
team's going to say that, but like he's not a top player.
Well, and that's debatable. I can't say I've watched enough Latin America League of Legends, but what I am saying is that support could have said that about any of the teammates, but he specifically said it about him. But you're absolutely right that people on your own team are going to hype up their own teammates way more than other players. So yeah, you got to take take it with a grain of salt, I guess. But anyway, um, what else was there? Uh, oh yeah, Alone looked okay. Alone looked
Yeah,
fine.
I thought he was pretty good.
I thought that he was another player of theirs that I thought looked respectable and looked like he belonged. I didn't notice too much about their bot lane, Shadow or Lisa. I didn't really have too much of an opinion on them. This team, to me, I'm glad with where I'm glad that they made it to plans. I'm glad they were able to showcase. But I think some of their macro decisions also showed that this team wasn't a team that deserved to move on to groups. I remember their jungler died, so Jose Dioto went down, and then they forced a 4v5 dragon with the enemy jungler up. They somehow stole the dragon, but that is not the right play. If Peanut is alive and your jungler is dead, you don't go for that dragon. Somehow Peanut didn't steal it, and anyways, they
Yeah,
got the
oh my
dragon. But to me,
God.
that's a mistake, though.
Yeah, when like they got that dragon stolen against them, I was like, "Oh, LG is going to come back." And then they stole Soul. Was it Soul? It was like they stole the Ocean Soul. And I was like,
Not
"Oh
sure.
my God." I think it was that they stole Ocean Soul, and I was like, "Oh my God, they're going to
Okay.
lose this game now."
Yeah,
Yeah.
but anyway. All right, we still got a few teams to move on to. Let's go next. Who's next on the list?
Yeah, so we myself, I had in D tier V3, Mad Lions, and INTZ, and for Blue Jay, he had in his C tier Mad Lions, V3, and INTZ. So I had those three teams in D tier. Blue Jay had those teams in C tier. Those three teams in
Yeah,
C
let me
tier with no teams in D tier, and he will give his explanation on that.
yeah, I just want to explain. So the reason why, and in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have gone this route. Like I should have had a D tier. So I do believe that JNT's is probably a little bit more accurate. The reason why I didn't put any teams in D tier is because in my mind I had it more so like if a team was in D tier, they didn't belong in play-ins, and I didn't feel like any team didn't belong in plans. I think every team got a win. So maybe if there was a team like if Mad Lions or V3 or INTZ went over and they lost all of their games, then I would have maybe considered putting them in D and saying that they didn't belong at Worlds. But I thought that every team looked good at some point, and so that's why I put them all in C and didn't put D. But yeah, I maybe shouldn't have gone that route, but I did. So
Yeah.
it is what it is.
I guess to your logic there, like that would be like an F tier for me. I know like the tier maker that I just pulled
Mm,
up so we could have a bit of a graphic, like it was just S to D, but by that logic, that would be like an F tier for me. Like teams that completely failed, didn't look like they belonged here, got clapped all the time. But nevertheless, I guess we'll go V3 Esports first.
sure,
This team, they were just they were a little bit, they were kind of irrelevant.
they were bad.
Yeah, like they were they got a win versus Rainbow Seven in the before Rainbow Seven won their two like they when Rainbow Seven was looking like the worst team at the playing tournament, like that's when V3 picked up a win on them, and then they got clapped twice by LGD and in their match against LGD when
Hmm.
LGD was looking really weak, and in the tiebreaker they just didn't look very good.
Yeah, I thought like Paz, their top laner, I didn't think looked anything special. He played the Renekton, and it was just useless. If you're going to play Renekton, you need to win your lane, or at least put out some pressure. I don't think he did either of those. Uh, Mind you, it was against Long Xing, and he was probably the best top laner there. You could argue that it's between him or Impact, or yeah, maybe those two. Maybe I'm forgetting one. But the point is, it's against a really good top laner, and Long Xing's Ornn kind of just wrecked them. So there was that. This was another team that tried to pull out Predator Galio.
I don't
That seems to be a thing
understand.
that people like. I don't
I
like it at
don't get
all.
it. I don't get it, man. Like just take Aftershock or take Spellbook. Why I
Spellbook would be great, man. Like
I'm pretty sure that Nimbus Cloak plus Spellbook is just you don't need like that extra burst of move speed from Predator. Not once have I ever seen like Galio randomly predatoring to a lane is like working out and is a good play. More often than not, he's predatoring to the lane, he gets seen on vision, and then he walks back to his lane. Or he's running up to the lane, the enemy top laner is playing some champion with a form of dash, whether it's like Ornn E, Camille E, or like Volibear ulting away or some random shit. Like it just seems like it's useless, and I don't like it. Stop running this,
yeah,
please.
I wouldn't put it in the useless category, but I would definitely put it in the not optimal category.
Yeah,
Like to
Gal
me,
Galio,
Spellbook
it's
just seems so much better that it seems obvious to me.
yeah, like Galio itself is a really good champion, and I like Galio. But this version that they're using it with the Predator, where he's like shoving waves early and then running up to lanes, I don't like it.
Yeah, no, I agree. But again, like we've seen a few different teams play it. Clearly, there's some people out there that like running it. This isn't the first time we've seen Predator Galio. I think it's like the third or fourth in the last month. But nonetheless, they played it. It didn't work. But I mean, sometimes it doesn't even matter what you do if the team is so bad they're going to lose no matter what they pick. And that might be the case with this team. But regardless, I'd like to see something where they at least have a chance to win, and I don't think that they really do give themselves a chance to win with Predator Galio. But enough harping on that. I thought Archer was their best player. Um, kind of seemed like he was an elo hell. I didn't think he was amazing, but I did think that his teammates were definitely worse. I thought his Ashe and Zaya looked good. I think he played a few games of Ashe, if I'm not mistaken, and I thought he looked good. So there was that. And then Boogie, I don't know that I don't know whether to pin it on him or pin it on his coach for draft, but he was playing some weird shit, man. He had two Elise games. Not that Elise is terrible, but I mean there's better picks. And if you don't snowball with Elise, you're kind of fucking yourself. So there's that. He played Silas jungle and he played some Karthus and he played Lee Sin. Lee Sin seems more acceptable. Karthus seems more acceptable. I'm pretty sure Silas is pretty bad jungle, is it not? Like I hear the
um,
clear is just awful.
yeah, the first clear is really terrible. But if you can
Yeah.
survive the first clear and not be too behind post like level 6, level 9, then it's like pretty OP.
Hmm.
Just because like the champion scales hella well. But yeah, the early game on it is pretty terrible.
Yeah, I'm not too huge on that pick. I think that we see too often junglers get exploited in that first clear. We definitely saw that in the UOL series against Supermassive. Despite the fact that they won game two, they were getting owned by Cacao. But that's neither here nor there. Yeah, I just think that the Silas pick is weird. I think two Elise games is really weird. I wouldn't expect to see it twice, but we did. Uh, well, and they lost, so there's that. I don't have anything more to say on V3. Uh, I'm happy that Japan has a representative. Let's go LJL, but I was a little bit more impressed with Detonation Focus Me last year, whatever year it
Yeah,
was.
I also this was another team where I just didn't like that didn't like how they drafted. Like their best in the LJL, their best player was Ace, and they just stuck him on like Galio and Set for the majority of their games, and I didn't like that. We saw the two
Yeah,
games that he picked Zoe. He was performing really well on the Zoe. His first Zoe game against Rainbow Seven, he was hella popping off. He didn't accumulate that many kills, but he was hitting hella bubbles. I think he was most damaged that game. And in one of his losses to LGD against Zoe, he was also playing pretty well. But when he was on the Predator Galio, I didn't like it.
yeah. Do you want to move on to? Well, who do you want to move on to next? I'll let you
We'll go
decide.
Mad Lions.
Mad Lion.
Actually, that's a
Okay.
lie. Let's do INTZ first. Let's save Mad Lions for last.
Okay. Okay, yeah. There's might be a lot to say about Mad Lions,
Yeah.
but okay, where do we want to start here? I'll start with Redbert. I thought that his Leona was just lackluster, and I thought that he didn't really have like you can engage and have a lot of pressure with Leona, and he didn't. So I wasn't too impressed with Redbert.
However, I really liked his Alistair against Team Liquid. I remember he ran the Phase
Okay.
Rush Alistair, which is
Yes. Yes.
something that
Okay.
Golden Guardians tried out in a best of five against Team
Okay.
Liquid in their, or not Team Liquid, sorry, against TSM in their, I think their second matchup of best of fives in the losers bracket of playoffs. But Redbird running the Phase Rush Alistair, I remember when it first came out, like when Huhi first picked it, I was like, oh shit, this is actually some good tech. You like combo in on Alistair and lane, and you're able to get in, get out really quickly without taking too much like poke damage in return, and you still have the ultimate to be tanky as fuck. But I really liked it. I liked the way that he played the Phase Rush Alistair, pretty much how you're supposed to play it in terms of getting quick damage in with your combos and getting out. I thought his engages on the Alistair were really good, and I liked it. But other than that,
I, I'm
I don't
glad you
know.
brought that up. I completely forgot about his performance on the Alistair.
The
Honestly,
Phase
it
Rush
was really
Alistair,
good.
baby.
No, it was really good, and so I'm glad that you bring that up. I think that he was a big part in the win against TL. Um, that was the game where TL had the TF, right? And they were getting picked off in side lanes. Like normally the team with TF is getting the picks in side lanes, and not in this one though. That was a little bit weird, and I think that the Alistair had a big part in that. The Camille had a big part in that. I think that was Tay, right? That's Tay.
hmm
I think Tay's our top laner. So he had a really good Camille game. And so I just thought that it was pretty. I was impressed for a team that looked bad in most of their games. I was impressed that they were able to get some picks in side lanes against TL, who had looked like the best team in the tournament at the time. Well, and maybe at the end as well.
Yeah, like I mentioned when we were talking about Team Liquid a little bit earlier, I thought INTZ did a great job in that game against Team Liquid where they were, they kind of, I guess in a sense, they copied the play style that Team Liquid struggled against in the NALCS of playing super fast paced with tons of cross plat, holy shit,
Cross map.
cross map 5-man plays, which I think they
Let's
did a really
go.
they did a really good job with. But other than that, and in their other games, like the first game of the tournament, Mad Lions versus INTZ, that game was just like a shit show. I didn't know what was going on. Like Taze clicking teleport on a ward and a brush when he's gonna kill Shadow, and he's like, and
uh,
he ends up getting super fed on the Urgot, and then they just get picked like 2 times late game, and then they just lose the game because they lose Baron and they lose a fight, and the game is just over randomly in like 2 minutes. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like this team had potential, but they just kept just fucking up in like so many ways possible. Like this, I feel like this team probably could have been like two. It could have been like, 2-2 if they just weren't like fucking up so much. Even 3-1, honestly. But
yeah, it
yeah,
feels like you could have got a better performance out of them on
yeah.
over most of their games, but
Like
you
I
just
like
didn't.
if plans happens again, I think that INTZ are maybe. There's a world where like where they're 2-2 or 3-1. Like they take over where like Legacy was.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you should expect a better performance out of the Brazil, out of CB LOL representative than TL, what was it, TLA, TLL, whatever the Latin America one is,
LLA.
LLA.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think generally like they have a bigger player base there, and so it's like comparing Europe to North America. The one with the bigger player base should have the better team, and so that's why I feel like it's a little bit disappointing for from INTZ or INTZ, pardon me.
Yeah, this team just made too many mistakes, and you can't be making hella mistakes at Worlds, and that's why they were
Yeah,
1-3.
their macro was a little wonky too. Like sometimes like their team is sieging mid with Baron and they're all there. None of the enemy team is showing. This is against Mad Lions. None of Mad Lions are showing and Tay like splits off to go do Krugs randomly and gets picked off. It made no sense. It's like, man, you're Camille, you have Baron buff, your team is sieging mid with no one showing. Just hang out. All you got to do is chill. You don't need to go do anything.
Just hang out.
If you're hanging out in the side lane, you could hook shot away. But because he was all like, I need them Krugs. He I don't know, he just got picked off and like it really just put an end to their Baron buff and yeah, I don't know. Enough on that. Let's go next.
Yeah, Mad Lions. I had them in D tier. Luigi had them in C tier, but they were in the worst for both of us. They were
This
in.
was the disappointment, right? Like to
Yeah,
me, this is the disappointment of plans. Like this team was supposed to be good. It's a European representative. You should make it out of plans. And this is also history. It's the first time that a major region lost a best of five. Is that right? It lost a best of five in plans specifically.
I don't know. I off the top of my head, I think that's accurate.
I think it is because, or maybe it's either that or it's the first time that a major region has not gotten out of planes. It's one of the two, and maybe it's both. Honestly,
It would be both then, because if they would have lost, if it's the
I know
first best of
NA
five
always gets
loss.
out of NA, Europe, and well, all the regions always get out of planes,
Yeah,
right? I feel like we would definitely remember if a team didn't make it
I'm
out.
pretty sure that's accurate. That
Yeah,
sounds about right. But yeah, this team was a massive disappointment. Pretty much, for me, the only player that performed all right was Karzi. I thought, I was funny. I was looking into the stats actually, and Arome is like the best statistical top laner in EU, and it's kind of not even close. Like I was
dude,
just
he
looking.
had a really good split,
I
man, and
know.
then I don't know what happened.
Man, he was just dying in lane so much. He got like solo killed by Impact. He was getting solo killed by Tay. He
So
uh,
so
he was
so
getting
impact
solo killed, man. Stop. He was getting solo killed by Armut, like
a lot,
a
a lot.
lot.
But here's the thing, though. So Impact plays the Mordekaiser against him and smashes him with Mordekaiser, and then I think it was the next game, or it was the next game after that, or something, where Arome comes back with the Mordekaiser, and I'm like, he's probably like, I'm gonna do what Impact did to me to this guy, and then he couldn't perform on that either. And I remember there was a Dragon Steel that was pretty free because Arome didn't ult the jungler. All he needs to do is just hit R on the jungler before he gets even near Dragon. Couldn't do that. It was pretty bad.
Yeah, it was the super massive game where Armut he had the really pop off Wukong game, and Kakao was playing in Italy, and he got like solo killed twice in lane, and it was just GG.
Also, what else? I lost my train of thought. God, I'm doing that a lot this episode. Um, oh yeah, the biggest worry for Mad Lions coming into this was they're all rookies, right? And would the pressure get to them? And you really got to ask yourself if the pressure got to them because that's one of the possible explanations for how a team can look so good and then just fall off a cliff once. I mean, they started falling around playoff time, right? That's when they started to look
Yeah.
bad with playoffs and LEC. I'm pretty
hmm
sure.
Yeah, I
So like,
remember I remember originally when like EULC like all the regions had moved to the online format as opposed to playing on stage. And people were really like asking the question like how much is Mad Lions benefiting from not having to play on stage and just playing from, I don't know exactly if they play from a facility or an office or if they just play from home on their PCs, but when you're rookies in a league, it's definitely advantageous to them not having the pressure of playing stage matches and just
wait,
being
are you
able to.
saying you don't know where Mad Lions play? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I don't know. I just mean I
They
don't know.
played in that office because remember they always do like the fun stuff
Oh,
after
okay.
they win.
I
They always
just
do like those.
But
Yeah,
but
they
but
they
my
play in
my
an
point
office. I
my
think.
point is like they're not playing on stage, and there's a lot less
Right.
pressure when you don't have to play on stage, and who knows if like because they were playing on like a very formal stage at Worlds, like it. And yes, there's no fans, there's no crowd, there's no like big like audio coming in the background of like the casters and everything, but you're playing on the stage and you're sitting
Yeah.
X number of feet away from your opponents, and yeah, the pressure might get to you in those kinds of situations. And them being all rookies minus humanoid, you gotta really ask the question like, did they crack under the pressure, and did them being on a stage affect their performance at all?
Yeah, I don't give a shit if there's fans or not. If it's Worlds, I'm nervous. Like if that's me, I'm hella nervous. I don't care if there's. I mean, yeah, maybe I would be more nervous if there's fans, but it doesn't take away that there's a lot of pressure. And I don't know. These kids are what, like 19 years old or something
They're
like
all
that.
pretty young for the most part.
I was afraid of my freaking shadow when I was 19 years old. So you know what? If you're
No
playing on the
pun
world
intended.
stage and you're gonna, yeah, I know, and you're gonna get a bunch of shit from fans if you lose, I'd be nervous too. So I give them the benefit of the doubt on that one. I do want to talk a little bit about their actual performance though. With Humanoid, you mentioned that you thought Carzy was the only one that played well. I thought Carzy played well, but I also thought Humanoid played well. Also, I think that he wasn't. I think that his effort to move his advantage into side lanes hurt him the most. So he would be doing really well in lane. He would get advantages against his lane opponent. And I remember the one game specifically, he's playing the Syndra into the Galio, and he TP'd bot, I want to say level 6. I don't remember if he had ultimate or not. So he might have been level 5 or level 6. But all of that pressure, he was pressuring this Galio so hard, and all that pressure just went to shit with a TP bot that materialized into nothing. And I remember thinking, like, this is why Humanoid isn't able to just take over one of these games. He's trying to move his advantage into another lane and just couldn't do it. And so that's why I felt like he played okay. He did have his mistakes, so he wasn't playing great. But to me, he wasn't the reason they lost. It was very clearly their top jungle and support. Kaiser seemed to be AFK. This guy was so good in the regular season. I think he was in MVP talks.
Hmm.
um, he was pretty bad though. He wasn't making much of anything happen.
Yeah, just to flip back to Humanoid real quick, just to so we can finish talking about him. In
Yep.
terms of his, just you talking about like his decision making and he would get a lane lead and attempting to broaden it to the other lanes. That was part of his play style in the LEC. He was a heavy side lane player. He liked to make a lot of plays around the map, but it's also one of the reasons that also like hurt him quite a lot. I know he has the most deaths among all mid laners at the like during the LEC summer season and at the playing tournament. He was among like the highest deaths per game of all mid laners. So it was sort of Humanoid was okay for me. I didn't think he was exceptionally like good, exceptionally bad. I think it was pretty similar to the Humanoid that we saw in the LEC, especially kind of when they started to go on a bit of a decline at the end of the summer season and going into playoffs. But yeah, I think Shadow for me, I think it just really showed that he was a rookie. Like like
Yeah.
that kind of a performance is what I would expect what I expect like Spica to do. I don't think Spica is going to do that bad, but like when I think of like being nervous
Careful
about,
now.
well, yeah, I know I want Spica to do well. Don't get me wrong, but like that's like if that was Spica going on right now, like or that would have been Spica, like I would have also been like, okay, yeah, this guy's a rookie. He's hella nervous. He's making terrible plays. Like he's overforcing ganks. He's like playing this Evelyn pick, which it seems like he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing whatsoever. That first Evelyn game against
He was
INTZ,
so good on
holy
Evelyn in the regular season though. His Evelyn was
I
great.
know
I
it,
don't know what
it
happened.
just didn't look like he knew what he was doing. Like it was so
Yeah,
confusing.
it didn't.
He just looked
Yeah.
lost.
Yeah. Well, I think LS was the one that I think it was LS that said something along the lines of like Shadow's the only guy to make Evelyn look balanced or something like
Yeah, I saw
that.
that.
It's pretty BM, but also kind of true.
Yeah, but I
um,
don't know. It definitely seemed like the pressure got to this team a little bit
see, you,
because
you know what I felt about? Sorry, go ahead. I didn't
no,
mean to
no, no
interrupt.
yeah, just
I was just gonna say it felt so much like Blabber. Like we're all LCS fans here for the most part. It felt Blabber esque. Like this guy was styling in regular season, and then playoffs hit, and he fell off a cliff. But Europe had a fourth seed. It's like as if we would have sent Cloud9 to Worlds as the fourth seed, and then we would have been surprised when Blabber didn't show up. That's kind of what it felt like.
yeah.
Because both of those junglers were just absolutely styling, and then yeah, then it looked like they were running it down. So pretty similar, honestly.
Yeah, a lot of the I remember there was like Dracos right after they lost their best of five against Supermassive was saying, "Hey, don't go and like flame the Mad Lions team." And
Yeah.
I do feel bad for them. It definitely seemed like, especially on like social medias, Carzy was like kind of just saying like he was like super depressed after like they lost and
Yeah.
he was gonna take a break from social media like up until like the next season started. And yeah, definitely don't send flame towards those guys to those players.
Dude,
I
it's
doubt
so
it's so.
pathetic that we even
Yeah,
have to
like
say that,
I
right?
can't
Like,
believe like people do that. Like people like get
I
man,
know.
players get like death threats. Like you should go kill yourself after like they lose a match at Worlds or they lose a match in playoffs. Like dude, like these people are like human beings and like Yeah, relax.
There's nothing wrong with
Send
being
love.
critical of someone's play. There's nothing wrong with that. However, there's no world in where sending a guy a hate message is ever the right play. That ain't the right play at all.
Yeah.
That's yeah. But anyways,
And especially if you're gonna
um,
like attempt to flame somebody, like do it in a more analytical way instead of just sending some random hate message on Twitter or on Reddit.
all right. Let's move on though, because we still got a fair bit to get through. Let's move on to MVPs for each role. We did get all the teams, right? Did we
Yep.
skip a team?
Nope.
Okay, we did get all the teams. Okay, good. Yeah, we're gonna do. So we wanted to do who we thought the MVP was in each role in play-ins. We thought this might be a little fun way to just highlight the really good performers. So JT, give me who you got.
Hold on, I'm just trying to pull them up here. Let's see if they come up. Okay, so just for our audio only folks, I just threw up the faces of all the players that we're going to discuss. But for myself, for an MVP in each role, for top lane I had Armut, for jungle I had Kongyue, for mid lane I had Jensen, for AD carries I kind of just combined both of the PSG Talon AD carries into one because I thought they both had really good performances.
Yep.
So I wanted to include them both because they both played games and Core GG support.
Yeah, so I actually, for the 80 carry specifically, I didn't know which one to go with, and so that's why I actually went a different route because they didn't play all their games. So for me, it was Lang Xing in top lane, Kong Yue jungle, Jensen mid. I had Gadget AD, and then Core JJ support. Although I could have easily put Kai Wing support as well. I thought that he was absolutely amazing too. So yeah, take that with like it's Core JJ, but it could have easily been Kai Wing as well. I was equally as impressed from both of them.
Yeah, we both had Kongyue, Jensen, and Core JJ as we shared the same picks for that, and for
Let's
reasons
start
that
with those ones then.
yeah, yeah,
Let's
yeah.
start with those then. Okay.
Yeah, we were pretty much discussing it before. Kongyue, with his unique sort of jungling play style, how he played around with Uniboy and his pocket pick Echo, like this guy just and being a substitute and coming onto this team that he probably had almost zero practice with before they arrived at the playing tournament, it really didn't show at all. Like this guy looked like one of the best junglers in the playing tournament, if not the best, and
Yeah.
it was really just good to see, kind of like not like a Cinderella story kind of, but it kind of ended up being like that because people had no expectations from this team after we find out that they're playing with uh, three substitutes.
Yeah, I went with him just because you could put him on anything and he would play well on it. Like he played Echo, looked great. His Graves looked good. His Kindred looked amazing. He had a KDA of like 20 on Kindred or something like that. His Lilia looked good. It felt like you could put him on whatever and you'd be fine and you'd have a really solid jungler. So hats off to him for that. We both went mid lane Jensen, as we mentioned. I think that was just for pure domination in the mid lane, right? For me, that was like his laning phase was dominant. He had a 9.1 KDA over his games, and also he had some tough matchups, but he didn't seem to struggle all that much. He played TF into the Syndra. Syndra could definitely win that lane early on, and then Oriana he played into the Lucian. We mentioned earlier how that Lucian should own him, but he kind of styled on Lucian, so that's why I went with Jensen.
Yeah, I just thought Jensen, it really showed how good he was in this playing tournament. We mentioned how he put Tally in a body bag pretty much in their two games against Legacy. Obviously, they had that bit of a rough game against INTZ, but he just looked really good from start to finish, I'm excited for him specifically with Team Liquid going into their group stage matches.
Yep. And then their other player, Team Liquid, the support, we each went with Core JJ. I think to me, it was like we got what we would expect out of Core JJ, and that's clean engages. That's something that is very in meta right now for supports, and his Recon can do that. I think he played 3 Recon games, 11.3 KDA. He's just really good. Even his Braum, like, there wasn't too much Braum in the tournament, and there hasn't been for some time, but he still brings out that pick every now and then, and his Braum was good. He had a perfect KDA, 0, 0, and 12 on his Braum, and I'm not surprised. Core JJ is really good, and he performed really well. So
People
that's
forget
that.
this guy's got a Rakan skin, bro.
Yeah.
Also, one thing I just completely like kind of forgot to mention when we were talking about Team Liquid, but like specifically with Core JJ and Jensen, like people like enemy teams just weren't banning out like Team Liquid's top tier champions. They
Yeah.
weren't they didn't ban Core JJ's Rakan. They weren't banning Jensen's Twisted Fate. they weren't banning Impact Shen. It just didn't make sense. I didn't like the way that
Yes. Yeah.
that teams were approaching Team Liquid in the draft phase. And if you're giving Team Liquid their OP champions, they're gonna smash you, and
So
that's what
I do
happened.
completely agree with you. I just want to play devil's advocate, and that's more so that we don't know what's happening in
Yeah,
scrims and
we
stuff
don't,
like that.
but
So there, but I still agree with you nonetheless. Like you need to
it
ban
does
that
it
shit.
does look a bit foolish when you give them
Yeah.
their best champions and then you get shit on.
Like every team should have enough scouting to know what teams really played well with during the LCS playoffs, and that was not that long ago. It was like 3 weeks ago, maybe a month. It wasn't too long, so I still agree with you, like I said, but I just wanted to play devil's advocate there. Let's move to top lane. So you had Armut. I thought about putting Armut, but I thought that his performance fell off a little bit as the tournament went on, and so I went the other route with Lang Xing, whose performance went up. He had the highest CSD at 15 for top laners, which was plus 13, but he did it playing a bunch of different shit. He played volley, he played Camille, Renekton. He had like insane pressure on Renekton, by the way. And then he played Gnar, Jax. Uh, some mistakes, but I think most of the mistakes were his teammates and not his own that led to them struggling early on, as I mentioned before. So yeah, for me, he was the best top laner, but I think and Armut are definitely both honorable mentions there.
Yeah, definitely agree. I thought Longjing was by far and away the best laning top laner.
Mm-hmm.
I ultimately went with Armut mainly because even in their group stage matches, in wins and losses, he was performing really, really well. And, he kind of did the best that he could with, the way that Supermassive shifted their draft identity in the best of five format with playing a bunch of Scion, playing a bunch of Malphite, being strictly sort of like a team fighter. Although he almost had that like really OP 1v2 in top lane playing Malphite against the Renekton plus whoever it else was, where he did like the flash E auto and almost got two kills. The guy lived 1 HP. I
Mm-hmm.
just think that guy was a straight beast. Like this is another guy who I think, I mean, like he's kind of like a Broken Blade esque kind of player from Turkey that you could and it could maybe look to import. Like if any's gonna look to import somebody,
Yeah.
I would look at this guy for sure.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I would be really excited to see him come over because we have seen what happens when you import Turkish top laners that have large champion pools. You get a lot of fun stuff. So I'm completely with you on that. And then 80 carry for myself, I went with Gadget because, well, his Twitch was really good, but he was also, I think you mentioned this earlier in the show, you were able to put him on anything.
Yeah,
You could rely on him to play different stuff. He played the Swain, he played Oriana, he played Ziggs. I love me some Ziggs, baby. And then Twitch, he was 2-0 with a 6.4 KDA, and he was just wrecking people on Twitch.
yeah,
So, I mean, what more can you ask for?
he did a great job. Being able to play mages in the bot lane really opens up your draft, and if you have a player who's able to do that, like that's just like extra bonus points for me.
Yeah.
For myself though, I did go the PSG bot lane. I didn't even know that D, like watching their first couple matches, I didn't know that D was also a substitute player. I found out the next day. I was like, wait, why do they have a
Yeah.
different bot lane playing right now? And it's like, oh, this is their main guy and D wasn't? Because like I was looking at stats and over the first two games, D was like one of the like top ADCs for stats at the playing tournament and in terms of like kills, KDA, least deaths and assists. And Unified came in and pretty much it was like a seamless transition. This team still looked really,
Dude,
really
we didn't
good. Like
even know.
yeah, like
Like,
we
it's
didn't
so
know.
funny.
And, like I just think all of PSG talent turned up and they were the big surprise in the playing tournament, given this what the
Yep.
situation was.
Definitely worthy of the MVP there for both of those ADs. So good for them. Let's move on to a weird version of our pop off and bean soup segment. This week's a little bit different. There's so many games and so many. Yeah, just there's no reason to just have one pop off or one bean soup. And so we went the overperform and underperform route. So we kind of decided to do what players we thought looked better than they should have, or just looked really good, and then what players just like really dropped the ball. So let's start overperform. Does that sound good?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, let's start overperform. My list, I had four players in there. I had No Man's, I had Impact, Uniboy, and Kong Yue. No Man specifically for the Cassidon. Um, damn, the Cassidy was absolutely silent. I will admit, his Cassidy probably should have been pressured a little bit more. But regardless, he absolutely styled with it and he was popping off. So I put him on that list. Impact, I put Impact not just because he had a really good play-in series, but because he actually played well in the area that I thought was his weakness so far this year, and that's playing weak side. Now, the one game they actually cast or cursed him. They're talking about how good he's playing weak side and then he dies later. But for the overall, they were right in that he was playing the weak side really well. Normally, if TL makes a play bot lane, I've said this before, Impact is dying on the other side of the map. That is his weakness. And I didn't see a lot of that in these play-in games. And so I really wanted to highlight Impact there. He absolutely styled as well on the Mordekaiser, which I have also said on this show that I don't think his Mordekaiser is that great. And well, he performed really well on it. So yeah, no man's Impact. And then my last two, Uniboy and Kongwei, I had to put them overperformed because they're subs. I don't care if they're already really good. It's so crazy to step into a new roster and just absolutely destroy people the way they did. And so that's my overperform list right there.
Yeah, for myself, I went Hanabi, Broxa, Uniboy, Reyes, and Santos. For top lane with Hanabi, I thought he just had a really like solid performance. I know like the stars of PSG talent ended up being Kangwei and Uniboy, but I think Hanabi did a great job of, I guess, playing weak side and playing not necessarily a supportive role, but just playing with limited resources and doing his job. And I think he did a really good job of it.
Yeah,
Uh,
I agree.
to your point about impact, I definitely had not necessarily high expectations of impact, but I knew that impact was going to be fine going into this tournament, and he's always been fine in international competition. He beats the good players and goes even against the great players, and we kind of saw that there. He just beat all the weaker top laners. For jungle, I went with Broxa. He was kind of more how Jamie views impact. I view Broxa. There's still a lot of question marks surrounding this guy. I know he turned it on a lot towards the end of the season, and I think he just had really good performances. I think his early games were pretty good. He did a good job of being able to pick up kills early on in the game, pressuring the enemy jungler, and I think he looked really good on the Graves, whereas Graves was like his biggest like question mark champion in the summer split. Mid lane, I went Uniboy, same reasons as Blue Jay. You know, coming into a team, being a substitute player and performing as well as he did, you got to put him up there for that.
Man's
Uh,
a beast.
yeah, for bot lane, I went Reyes. I thought him and Bopip were the two bright spots on Legacy for me. I thought, minus the Tristana game, he did a really good job in terms of his positioning and team fighting and DPS in fights. Obviously, that Tristana game was a little bit int, but I think he did a really good job overall. I think Legacy could have actually done something against LGD in the best of five had they had like better solo laners. But I think Reyes did a good job. And lastly, I had Santos for support. I just thought he did a really good job on his engages, specifically with Alistair. I know like he had that one Alistair
Yeah.
game that he lost, but like he was playing nuts. Like his flash headbutt pulverize combos were really good. I think he pairs really well with Gadget in terms of also being able to play multiple play styles and being okay with doing that. Like he's kind of a guy I would maybe compare to Mickey X, who works really well with his bot laners despite whatever they're playing. They know what their job is. They're very good role players, and you can kind of count on them to play anything.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mentioned already on this show how I think that it's important to have a support that can get the proper engages off right now in this meta, and I think Santos did that, so I definitely agree there. Let's move on to underperformers. My list of underperformers consists of Arome, Shadow, Kaiser from Mad Lions, the three of them, and then Kramer as well. I don't want to get too far back into things we've already said, so I'll just go over it really quick. Arome, we saw him get smashed top lane. Didn't matter what the matchup was. He was just losing lane and dying solo a lot. Shadow was kind of AFK. If he wasn't AFK, he was running it down. It just looked really weird. It looked like he was trying to force things and he was inting. Kaiser, he was absolutely AFK. This was a guy that was making so many plays in the LEC and he was up for MVP for his playmaking, being all over the map in places you wouldn't expect. We didn't see any of that. So there's that. But then Kramer, the area that I thought was interesting with Kramer and why I put underperform is because this was a guy that I thought was going to be one of the best players in the play-in tournament. And while he did have some really good performances, I remember he had a Jin performance where he was like 10-0-6 or something. He did have some pop-off performances. I do think that some of his mistakes were the reason that they lost games, like when he split off from his team in their first game. Like there's no AD carry that ever does that. And there was some other plays as well. Oh yeah, the one time Twitch is spotted on a ward walking down towards him bot lane. He has to have seen him. I don't see a world where he didn't see this Twitch, and he still sits there like not expecting the Twitch to open up on him. Nonetheless, Twitch stealthed in and just one shot him, and he died. And so these were just uncharacteristic mistakes, and so he's another underperformer for me, and so that's my list. Once again, that's Arome, Shadow, Kaiser, and Kramer.
Yeah, I had a pretty similar list. I had the trio of Mad Lions players with Arome, Shadow, and Kaiser. I definitely there was a lot of inting going on with those three players. They definitely all looked
Yeah.
off. Kaiser specifically was, I think, going into this tournament as potentially being like one of the best supports, like just individually at the playing tournament. Before plans, if I would have picked my best supports in the whole playing tournament, it would have been Core JJ and Kaiser. And Kaiser was just so far gone from his performances in the early parts of the LEC. He had like, well, I think the first game that he had was like a Pantheon game where he was like straight up like running it down. I didn't, as we mentioned before, Arome and Shadow were not having good games. They were dying a lot. Um, Moving on, because we've already discussed Mad Lions a bunch. I had GA in the mid lane. I thought his laning was very, very good, but outside of his, this is more. I'm kind of counting like more of the group stage matches than the best of five matches, because I think everyone knew that like GA was like a top tier player in this playing tournament, and he did not look the part in the group stage matches. He would have very good laning phases, but outside of laning phase, he would make some really questionable plays, specifically on the Twisted Fate, which we've mentioned before. But I didn't pick an
Hmm.
ADC for underperforming teams. I thought a lot of the AD carry play was actually really, really good. All the teams that were like higher tier teams, I thought their AD carry play was fine. I thought Tactical was fine. I thought Kramer was fine. I thought Karzi was the best performing player on Mad Lions, despite them kind of shitting the bed. And even on the worst teams, like the teams like Legacy, who had Reyes, or Supermassive with Zeitnot, or like V3 with Archer. I thought they all did a pretty good job, so I didn't really feel the need to pick an ADC because I thought the ADC play was pretty good for the most part.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that when you mentioned GA, I think that you could equally put Peanut alongside him as well because he was kind of
Yeah,
inconsistent,
I
let's
just think
say.
Shadow
But
was way worse, so
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
If not for
yeah.
Shadow, I think I probably would have put Peanut in there.
Okay, so that's our bean soup pop off for this week. Let's move on. What do we got next, JNT?
So I guess we've kind of got a lot of our play-in discussion out of the way. Now that we know which teams will be joining the rest of the main stage group teams, we wanted to talk about uh, for each specific group, one role that we are looking at as like the premier like role for that specific group.
Yep.
So we're gonna start it off with Group A. So Team Liquid is now slotting into this group after the play-in draw. So the Group A teams are G2, Suning, Team Liquid, and Machi. And for me, my role to watch is support in this group. I think the support play in this group is going to be really insane. We have Mickey X from G2, Core JJ from Team Liquid, and oh my god, his name's escaped me. Sword Art from Suning. Honestly, I have no clue who the Manchi support is, but just those three supports in Sword Art, Core JJ, and Mickey X, I think will make some great support play. We know that Core JJ has a champion Ocean. We know that Mickey X can play pretty much anything and has his pocket pick Gragas. And Sword Out has pretty much been a top tier support in the entire world for since I can remember, like season 5, and he's always been good. So I expect some really good support play out of this group.
I actually went with the mid lane for this group, and I think that's because Jensen looked so good in play-ins. Had he not looked so good, I wouldn't have gone mid lane. But you got Angel from Suning, you got Caps. Caps is always a player you want to watch. Like even if he's popping off or if he's claps or craps, you want to see him.
Yeah,
So
sure.
that's the guy that you want to watch no matter what. And then Jensen and Mission is Machi's mid laner. To me, I think this will just be like a role that's really interesting to watch. I want to see if Jensen can bring some of what we saw in plans over to the group stage. I'm not sold on it, but I'm willing to say that I can see it happening, and I hope that we do.
Yeah, I'm a bit worried for Jensen, especially against
Mhm.
Caps. I think
Caps
I'm
has looked a lot more volatile
he
this year. I'll say
has,
that.
but
Like he's
I just
always
I
claps or
can't.
crap, but this year we've seen more craps than usual. If that
Yeah,
makes
I
sense.
just can't like get out of my mind just like the images of like C9 versus Fnatic at Season 8 Worlds where he like hit him with the like back to Lissandra thing, or he said that at like at the MSI in 2019 where Team Liquid got absolutely raw dogged by G2 in the finals. Oh Lord,
True.
I'm a bit worried for Jensen, but he did have a really good performance in plans, which makes me like kind of think that Jensen's kind of looking on point.
Let's hope so. Who do you got for B? Or what role do you got for Group B?
For Group B, I went with top lane.
Yep,
Um,
same.
yeah, I think we have Nuguri from Damwon, we have Zoom from JDG, we have Finn from Rogue, and we have PSG Talent is the playing team that slot into this group, so we have Hanabi. I think my main reason for picking top lane is because I think the trio of Finn, Nuguri, and Zoom will be super interesting. The way Rogue kind of got exploited in the playoffs
Hmm.
was through Finn in the top lane, and I want to see kind of if he's able to get back up to his level of performance that he had earlier in the LEC season, or if we're going to see the same situation with Nuguri and Zoom just being able to dog Finn from the get-go with their picks. I wonder if they're going to try to draft around Finn to try to maybe make up for the individual discrepancy, or if they're just going to say like, "Fuck it, we're going to blind pick you this champion, Finn, and you're going to get a carry picked into you, and let's just hope you don't die."
Yeah, no. So honestly, I don't really have much more to add. I think that top lane is the area that's exciting to watch. Hanabi looked good in play-ins. We're expecting really good things out of Nuguri and Zoom, and Finn has been the weak spot for Rogue, so he needs to step up. That should be a volatile lane. So again, not much to add there. So let's move on to C then, because C I got for Group C I got the jungle being
Yeah, me too.
Selfmade, Spica, Clid, and Peanut. These are all guys I'm excited to watch. Selfmade has been in my opinion, hands down the best player for Fnatic. Spica has really ramped up more towards playoffs in the LCS. Clid is just an absolute playmaker and is really exciting. And I think you could say the same thing about Peanut. So yeah, to me, it's obviously the jungle that I'm excited for from this group.
Yeah, and the one thing that I really like about all these junglers is they have such a wide champion pool. We know that Spica can play all the tank engagey sort of junglers in the world. His Lee Sin is really good. He whipped out the Evelynn in NA playoffs and whipped out this Flex Shen jungle. We don't really know like how Scrim meta and if we're gonna see that come out from TSM, but that's like kind of another tool in their toolbox. Selfmade has been like super heavy on the AP carry junglers with Gragas, with Evelynn, plays the Lee Sin, kind of was the first player to pick up Hecarim in EU. And I think he's the best jungler in LEC, and he's the best player on Fnatic, and he's probably I would consider him top three in the LEC in terms of overall players. I'm really interested in jungle. Clid is a monster. He's probably one of the best junglers in the world, and we have Peanut slotting in there who maybe we'll have to see if we get a BO5 format of Peanut with him popping up on the Kindred, or if we're going to see over aggressive dying a lot Peanut with his Lilia and Lee Sin.
So much Lee Sin in this group. That's what I'm really excited for to see some Lee Sin play.
Yeah, all these
Uh,
players are Lee Sin players. Like
yeah,
they play Lee Sin.
over to Group D. I went mid lane. Where did you go?
It's just got to be mid lane, Knight versus
Yeah,
Chovy. Oh my God,
Knight
like
Chovy. Let's go,
Okay,
baby.
but the thing is like I don't want to see Knight versus Chovy be like Orianna versus Zoe or like Syndra versus some other random shit. Like I want to
We
see
can't decide that.
I
I
want to
get
I
you.
know. I just want to
It's
see
out
some
of our
really
hands.
fun mid play.
Yeah, same. Yeah, it is out of our hands though, as you know very well. You're praying for that LeBlanc or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's just see Akali at least once. But also, I don't think we can discount PoE and No Man's. I think No Man's looked good in plans. Yes,
Mhm.
it's plans. That's not group stage. So let's not pretend that popping off in plans means you're going to pop off in groups. It doesn't mean that. But so far, he's looked really good, and I still think PoE is one of the best laners that the LCS has to offer. And so I don't think that you can just forget those two. Yeah, I think mid lane is the obvious choice here for that group of where to be excited about.
Yep.
Okay, let's move on to last topic. Last topic is the world's meta. Just want to talk a little bit about what we've seen so far and if there's anything that really caught your eye. The first thing that seems a little bit obvious to me is the Twitch Recon. That's something that just came out of nowhere,
Mhm.
and it seems like we're not seeing the Twitch with the Recon anymore. People are banning out at least one of them. At least it looks like. It's something that surprised me that it took us this long to see, but also I think that if we do see the Twitch Recon that's left open, I think we'll see a counter into it of some kind.
Yeah, I'm we really got to see how the meta evolves going from play-ins to group stages because we don't exactly know if the play-in meta is going to really reflect the group stage meta, and
Yep.
even in that, the group stage meta does shift between week one and week two, and we have seen that in in previous world championships. But The main thing that I thought was super interesting was the support sort of champion pool, and pretty much all the supports that are really getting picked and they're really showing up a lot are like the team fight engagey supports like Leona, Nautilus, Rakan, and Alistair. We're seeing a little bit of fall off in terms of the more peely,
I think we saw
like
one Karma.
yeah, we saw a Karma game. We saw only a couple Thresh games. I think two Thresh games. We saw like not that many Bard games, maybe like four or five. We didn't see too much Senna. So I'm really liking like this sort of team fight support, that kind of this team fight support meta that always sort of ends up coming back to the World Championships. Alistar has pretty much been a staple at Worlds for ever since like Ardent Sensor meta.
Yeah.
Alistar pretty much always ends up finding its way back into the World Championships just because you can make so many plays on the champion just with simple combos in lane, or like the flash W headbutt pulverize combos where you'll headbutt somebody back into two people, flash Q them, and you just have like insane CC and tankiness.
A lot
But
of teams will use Alistair. They'll bait in fights towards Baron, and Alistair will hex flash out of nowhere
yeah.
for the engage. That's pretty common as well.
But I'm really liking the support meta that we're seeing. I thought that like more like enchanter supports and peel supports are a lot more sleeper. I definitely prefer the team fight oriented meta with a lot of 2v2ing in lane, or having your support roam up to the mid lane, burning flashes or like making plays, whether that be with like Nautilus or Leona. I think it's like I mentioned before, like it's really valuable when you have supports that are able to roam the map and affect other lanes, whether that's burning summoner spells or getting lane pressure. And when you see these more enchanter kind of supports, like especially into an engaged support, the lane can get really doomed if the engaged champion kills a support one or two times, and it's really tough for those engaged for the enchanters to get back into the game.
Yeah. One last quick thing on Twitch specifically that I wanted to mention is we're not seeing Manamune Twitch, and I'm very happy about that because it's not even that I think Manamune Twitch is really bad, but I think that you're just racing to scale on Twitch, and you could do that fine with going Bork. Like, there's nothing wrong with going Blade of the Rune King. I think that Manamune is a little bit greedy. It's like you need scaling on top of your scaling. I don't think that's necessary, and I think that is a little bit too slow on the world stage. So I like the build that people are going right now on Twitch. That's my final thought on that. But with Twitch, I think we're going to see a lot more Malphite. We've seen a little bit, but as you mentioned earlier, that Malphite is going to own a Twitch, so I'm expecting to see some of that. Also, Lilia. We're seeing a lot of Lilia. That I expect to continue. I
Yeah,
don't see that changing. I think it's a really strong champion.
yeah, a lot. I think the AP junglers are getting a lot more favor right now in terms of the play-in teams. We saw a ton of Lilia. We saw what's his name, Boogie, come out with the Elise and the Karthus. We saw a Silas game, as you mentioned, and
Evelyn.
the other, yes, Evelyn is the other AP jungler that I'm thinking of. But more AP junglers than we've seen in the past. And one thing that I really do like about the AP junglers is it opens your draft up for more like volatile mid lane matchups with like Aurelia, with Lucian, and these very aggressive all-in sort of mid lane champions, which I think will be very exciting going into the World Championship main stage, where we have these really OP mid laners like Knight, like Chovy, like Showmaker, like Bjergsen, like Caps. I want to see some fucking good mid lane matchups.
Yeah, and I'm expecting to see a lot more Evelyn. Honestly, I think it'll either be banned or picked. And the other thing that I'm expecting, or that I'm a little bit surprised about, maybe not that surprised, I don't know, but Ash Senna, I thought would be. Well, I thought there was a chance that we didn't see any of it, and we saw some of it, and I think that still could change as time goes on. But obviously, the nerfs did something because we were seeing Ash and Senna in almost every game, and we're no longer seeing that. And clearly, the Caitlyn is much less prioritized as well for AD carries there, and maybe that's one of the reasons we're seeing so much Twitch is because the priority on those champions have gone so much more down. But that's it for me on Worlds Meta. Anything else that you wanted to talk about real quick?
You motherfuckers that are building Manamune Twitch in my games, stop doing that. Stop doing that. It's terrible.
It's not terrible. It's
It's
just not
terrible.
ideal. I don't think it's terrible. I just think it's
You
not the best way to
people,
go.
I gank your lane and you get first blood and you first space and you buy a tier on Twitch. I'm gonna lose it.
Okay. I sort of agree. Okay, let's move on to just some quick news, just some things that you guys need to know about. The items and rune changes is out, right, JNT?
Yeah, I think they're hitting PBE pretty soon. They released like a full post about it yesterday. and how like
Yeah,
the
we're
whole
not gonna get into
yeah,
that, so
just
don't.
if you haven't seen it, go look it up. There's like a huge long post to read about it with all the new items. The game is going to get super fucked in the off season and in the preseason. Like people are just going to have to like relearn the game. LS is going to have a field day with all of his content.
Yeah, we
That's
could
what
probably
that's
put a
one
link in
thing
the
that yeah,
description,
we
right,
we can.
JNT? Okay,
We
cool.
can. That's one thing that I think like man, LS will be like LS and Freak like go when this whole when all these changes come out, go watch LS and Freak do videos on these things. These
Yeah,
sort of aspects of League are things that LS and Freak really like to dive into in terms of like the math behind champion and item builds and just champion kits. They do a really good job of like deciphering like what you should be building on these champions, how you should be building, when you should be doing your back timers. It's really good. If you want good content related to all these changes, expect a lot of good content from Ellis and Freak.
really good point. I totally agree. The other thing that I want to talk about, this is weird. I can't believe that we're talking about this, but like it's such a weird thing that I thought we needed to bring it up. Um, excuse me. A couple of interviews with Travis Gafford asking the players about what their quarantine experience like, and two of them out of the three interviews I saw, two of them both said that there's not enough food, which I thought was so weird. I thought that was really funny, but also kind of worrisome because like I don't know. It shouldn't be that hard to get five gamers some food. Like that's literally all they want. If they're gonna be quarantined, they're like, "Okay, I'm a gamer. I'll stay inside all day anyways. Not a problem. Just give me some food." And if like the NBA and the NHL and all these leagues can do quarantines with like 25-man rosters and 30 teams, then for 22 rosters and 5-man or 22 rosters with 5-man rosters, you could probably just get them some freaking food. And I was like, I wonder if they're like exaggerating. Maybe it's not that bad. And then Broxa comes out with, yeah, they were able to get me a little bit more because I'm a big guy. But, and I'm like, what? Like, what are you saying? And then Cacao says he lost 7 pounds. What is going on in this quarantine over at Worlds? Just so yeah, I know that sounds weird for us to put that in the quick news section, but that is so strange to me that I just thought it was something we need to mention. I really wonder what quarantine is looking like for some of these players, and if it's affecting them. Get these guys some fucking food. Like, come on, man.
Yeah,
But
I
anyways,
don't
that's
think I
that.
don't think there's any famines going on around here, so
That's so bizarre. I couldn't believe when Cacao said he lost 7 pounds. I'm like, what? They've been there like 2 weeks or something. I don't know, maybe three. Regardless, anything else in quick news other than the schedule, JT?
no, I'm just looking on Reddit right now and see if I'm seeing if there's anything that I see right now that is like
Um,
relevant or I
okay,
should
so while you're
mention.
browsing that, yeah,
No,
while you're
there's
browsing
nothing.
that,
There's nothing. I
okay,
seen it.
so there's nothing else
Oh,
that we need
actually,
to let you.
no, I just saw
Oh,
something.
oh, alarm. Go
Just
ahead.
a stat, an interesting stat. In the 2020 playing stage, there were 78 unique different champions that were picked,
Oh, okay,
which
that is
is
interesting.
kind of a lot of champions, and I like that.
Also, I know that blue side is winning a lot too. It was before yesterday. They said that there was a 65% win rate on blue. I think that might have gone up. I didn't do the math, but I think it's got to be somewhere around there. I think blue side is winning a lot more. So that's another thing to throw in for the meta that I forgot to mention.
Oh, one other
Um,
thing, sorry.
oh, we got
Uh,
more.
the Pickens are now Pickums are live now. Like the
Oh, like
world's
you could go do your
Pickums.
bracket
Yeah,
on
yeah.
LOL Esports.
Where you
Okay,
rank
yeah,
the groups and you get like certain icons if you get enough points and then after the group stage there'll be the knockout bracket and if you get all the picks right, they'll give you like all the ultimate skins for free on your account. So, who knows?
yeah.
But I
And
think
the
this
last,
Worlds is a pretty hard. I think this Worlds will be pretty hard for pick'ems. Like Group C, I have no fucking clue how that's going to end up. Like Group B and D, we don't really know the relative level between LCK and China right now. So
I'm
DRX or
still not
Top
sold
could
on Group
finish.
A either.
Yeah, I mean, you're a Group A. Like who knows? Maybe like TL makes it out. Maybe they fall flat on their face again. Who knows?
We got the Vapire in the live chat saying, "Is there any must watch games for people who don't watch all the games?" Honestly,
You got to
I
watch all
kind
the
of feel like
games.
yeah, it doesn't feel like a normal week of LCS where it's like, oh, you got to watch TSM versus TL or TSM versus C9. It doesn't feel like that. It's like this is Worlds. You got to watch them all.
Yeah,
Maybe okay. You know what? No, I'd go with um uh Damwon versus
JDG.
JDG, thank you.
And top
Damn,
versus DRX.
and then top versus DRX. Yes, those are the two games that I don't know exactly what times they're at, but that's the ones that you want to see. And then for the schedule that we just wanted to announce, the schedule for World starts on Saturday, October 3rd. That is 4 a.m. EST, 1 a.m. PST. So that's going to be in the middle of the night. It's not going to change, guys. It's going to be like this for almost all of Worlds. So if you're going to want to watch Worlds games, you're going to have to stay up all night or catch the VODs the next day. That first game, I believe, is Top and FlyQuest, the first game. But I mean, yeah, you're going to want to watch them all, honestly. Okay. That was a long episode.
Yep.
We got okay. So, thank you to everyone who showed up for the live show. Always appreciate those that are active in chat. As per usual, follow us on Twitter at BlueJ_GG at Tuminator___ nothing. He's got nothing after that. What a noob. You can follow us on that. We haven't been as active because the games have been in the middle of the night and it feels a little bit weird. We'll do our best to be a little bit more active on Twitter. Be sure to follow on for the live stream. That actually, when is our next stream? Is that going to be
It's
a
gonna
week from
be
now?
it's gonna be on Wednesday again at the normal time of 9 p.m. EST, 6 p.m. PST,
Okay.
because the break between the week one of groups and week two of groups is Wednesday. There's no actual games going on Wednesday. There are games the Tuesday morning and there are games the Thursday morning. But then after that, we will be returning to the original format of episodes being on Monday. So expect the next episode to be in 1 week on Wednesday, and then the episode after that 5 days later on a Monday.
And if any of this changes, we will tweet about if there's any changes to what JNT
Yes.
just said. So for now, expect that, and if there's a change, we'll notify you guys on Twitter. Um, Also, go sub on YouTube. Okay, hit that sub button. We need more of those, and
Hmm.
leave comments and all that crap because it's good. They tell me that's good, so do some of that.
Yeah, we
Uh,
respond. If you leave a comment, we'll respond.
yeah. I think that's everything, right?
Yep.
All right, cool. The podcast is also available on Spotify and anything that's available through Anchor. We just go through Anchor, so that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that stuff. Thank you again to all of our listeners. We appreciate all of you. We love you so much, so much. And this has been episode 17 of the Clown Fiesta podcast.